Good afternoon and welcome to the third public hearing of the Joint Select Committee on Land and Physical Infrastructure pursuant to the committee's inquiry into the Trinidad and Tobago Inter-Island Ferry Service, with specific focus on the procurement and management of the ferries. I would like to take this opportunity to remind members and officials to turn off their cell phones or place same on silent or vibrate. Please note that this session is being broadcast live on Parliament Channel 11, Parliament Radio 105.5 FM, and the Parliament's YouTube channel, ParlView. Members of the viewing and or listening audience can send their comments via email at parl101@ttparliament.org, on our Facebook page at facebook.com/ttparliament, or on Twitter at ttparliament. Before we begin our deliberations this evening, I would like to read into the record a letter received from the Legal Department of the Tobago House of Assembly. An inquiry into the Trinidad and Tobago Inter-Island Ferry Service. The Chief Secretary of the Tobago House of Assembly, the Honorable Kelvin Charles Esquire, confirms safe receipt of your missive dated the 24th day of August 2017, the content of which is noted. I'm instructed to inform you that the Tobago House of Assembly will not be represented at the sitting of the Parliamentary Committee on Land and Physical Infrastructure, fixed for Wednesday the 6th of September 2017 at the Victor E. Bruce Financial Complex, Scarborough, Tobago. As you are no doubt aware, the management of the airports and seaports of Trinidad and Tobago falls under the purview of the central government and its agents, the Board of Directors. In view of the above, I shall appreciate your communicating our non-attendance to Chairman Senator Stephen Creese, Esquire, and thank him for the opportunity afforded to the Tobago House of Assembly in this connection. Yours faithfully, signed, C. Alvin Pascal, Senior Legal Counsel. We continue. I would like at this stage to introduce the members of the committee. I am Stephen Creese, Chairman of this committee, and on my left,
Glenda Jennings-Smith, Member.
Good afternoon, Wade Mark, Member.
Good afternoon, Nigel De Freitas, Member.
Good afternoon, Franklin Khan, Member.
Good afternoon, Rushton Parry, Vice Chairman.
I wish to remind our viewers, listeners, and our present audience that the objectives of this inquiry are: 1, to understand the current state of the ferry service in Trinidad and Tobago; 2, to examine the policies and procedures used to acquire ferries and to ensure that value for money is obtained; 3, to determine whether due diligence govern the conduct of all aspects of the maintenance and management of the provision of the seabridge service; and 4, to determine the changes and challenges with respect to the maintenance of ferries. I would also like to remind both our committee members and officials to direct their questions and concerns through the chair. And I ask that members and officials activate their microphone when recognized by the chair and turn same off when finished speaking. I shall also remind people that it's necessary, in order not to interfere with the communication system, that cell phones be turned off or at least placed on silent or vibrate. I would now invite the Inter-Island Truckers and Traders Association to introduce themselves.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and other members. Horace Hamid, President of the Inter-Isle Truckers and Traders. To my left, Mr. Robert Tardier, Second Vice President, and to my right, Samuel Applewhite, Secretary of the Association.
Yeah, please feel free to make any opening remarks you may
Okay.
get.
We are all aware of the issues that have been plaguing the sea bridge. So it's no long, it doesn't make sense for us to continue going over that problem, but there are some problems we'll raise. The Inter-Isle Truckers and Traders Association is the only representative body for the active users of the vessel present today. We take this opportunity to not only speak for ourselves, but also all other citizens who use the sea bridge along with us, but has no voice to speak here today. The Inter-Isle was set up in 2012 to provide a liaison between the port and the association and its members when problems arise like cabins, no tickets, and other things, problem with the vessels on the sea bridge. This is the reason why the association was set up and for the welfare of its members. Okay, it's a known fact that many senior citizens, mothers with infants and others journey to Trinidad to seek special medical care unavailable in Tobago. It's extremely difficult for them to navigate sometimes the narrow, lengthy staircase on the fast ferry due to physical mobility issues, even with limited hand luggage. To avoid the delay in embarking the vessel, we recommend sourcing, when we sourcing vessels again, we look for things, vessel with elevator and so it will be easier for the elderly to access these vessels and mothers and children. Right? The fast ferry is not only used by most, the fast ferry is used by most of the traveling public, including children, university study, business executives who travel to Trinidad for meetings. We recommend that the port police be fully reinstated on those vessels to ensure good behavior and reduce vandalism to the vessel. Within recent months, the absence has created a sense of lawlessness and disregard had become the norm. We know that some steps are being taken to rectify this since we raised the issues, and we are thankful. Some of the areas we believe that the present port police will help are with the noise level, loud music, other outbursts, including obscenities from those engaged in recreation activities such as card playing, should not be affected to or offend the other passengers who understand that recreation. We understand that recreation is part of our culture, and that the bar area are usually used for these recreation activities. Because of this, when procuring a fast ferry vessel, please consider one which will contain a seal-off area or has the capacity to be enclosed for those activities. Persons playing games and music via their cell phones and other tablets need to use headsets and to be considerate to those who may be studying for an exam or preparing for a meeting or generally unaware. Parents should be permitted to take off. Parents should not be permitted to take their children outside the vessel during sailing time, because at present these vessels, the fumes and other things from those vessels affect us directly. Port Police is also a direct team player with our National Police Service, and they should have the ability to liaise with law enforcement as it relates to suspect criminal activities. They have an eye on detecting unusual behavior and can relay information as needed when present at the port. When presented with the presence of the port police, we believe we can make the sailing more comfortable and safer and less irritable for the passengers. As it relates to the service, as it relates to the cargo service, which operate of our future vessel to procure, we suggest that the following guidelines be implemented. A vessel that can make the turnaround time in no more than 5 hours. By turnaround time, we do not mean the sailing time on water. The 5 hours must be including loading, offloading, sailing, shackling, unshackling of the vehicles, lifting the anchor, and lowering of the ramp. This may seem like a lot, but it has been accomplished with other vessels in the past. At present, the sailing from Trinidad was adjusted from 2 to 12:30 because it takes approximately 6.5 hours with the vessel at present to make this journey. We are recommending that it goes back to 2:30 because at the present, drivers still have to overnight in Trinidad to pick up their load. So additional cost is incurred to us. There are also a lot of issues on the vessel, washroom and other things. The secretary will deal with some of those issues.
Good afternoon. At present, the situation on the Cabo Star is inhumane. We have to lie on the floor. The seating accommodation, seating were installed, reclining chairs were installed. Some of them are rocking like about 20 degrees when you sit on it. The bathroom facilities not functioning. We have one washroom for 80 passengers. Yesterday morning I was called 3 o'clock in the morning because they had no bathroom to use. It was locked. This resulted in some of the drivers using the face basin, some of them using the side of the vessel to urinate off the side of the vessel. It's just not healthy. It's not workable. We asked for cafeteria. We got a cafeteria with snacks only. You can't feed drivers with snacks. That could cause long-term health problems. So we're asking that whatever can be done to facilitate us better. We need rest. Internationally, drivers need rest when they're driving. We don't get rest. That could make us a hazard on the road. So we're asking kindly to address this situation.
I will now let Mr. Robert Tardier bring you up to date on some information that is available.
Good day, gentlemen. Based on information fed to me, I am questioning as to how the Cabo Star was acquired in the first place. Other information reaching me is that the Cabo Star was dysfunctional. It was sent to Panama to re-register. It was re-registered under a RoRo basis with a certificate for 3 months. The actual labor on the Cabo Star was handpicked in Panama just before the vessel left to come here. A RoRo vessel is basically a cargo vessel. The insurance for a RoRo vessel only handles the hull of the boat, the crew, collision at sea, and the general cargo upon the vessel. It does not cater for passengers. Now, a little over a month after the vessel arrived here, what I consider that vessel to be is just an oversized version of the Atlantic Provider. In recent times, people have been allowed to travel on the vessel. My question to the Port Authority Board is, are they insured? What measure was taken in place to allow people to travel on the vessel? We have asked for transparency over the years. We have gotten no transparency. We have nothing in writing. We have nothing at all from the Port Authority or the officials behind the Port Authority as to how this is happening and how it is continuing to happen. I understand that we signed for a year agreement. What is that agreement? Is it a RORO? When we requested a ROPAX? It's two entirely different schematics of shipping. Now, as far as I understand, the people that travel on that vessel, unless I am mistaken, are traveling at their own risk. Who is providing the insurance? Who issued the extension of the certificate for the RORO vessel because it was only valid for 3 months? All these questions need to be answered. As well as the vessel is incapacitated to handle passengers, as Mr. Applewright rightly pointed out. Where do you go from here? No, you're talking about the cargo vessel and you're talking about the fast ferries. We have a fast ferry running on 4.5 hours. We have one sitting down by Carry Dock for nearly 5 months at a cost of about $1,500 US a day. 2 years ago, and I am reliably informed that the Port Authority was totally aware that both vessels needed to replace the engines and generators on the vessels. It was not done. A fast ferry, according to Lloyd's of London and maritime law, is supposed to come off between 11 and 14 months of travel because that boat is traveling every day. This has not been done for years by the port. If you are unaware, I have been on the port for over 4 decades. And as far as I'm concerned, the mismanagement and mishandling of the sea bridge from Trinidad to Tobago has not stopped. In fact, it's a deteriorated, I don't know the words to put it into. The forensic, if you do a forensic on the port now, you would be shocked. Where are we going from here? Where do we stand? Where do the truckers stand? I mean, we support Tobago, is our lifeline, is your lifeline. The tourism department depends on all this. What is being done? You're talking about acquiring a fast ferry. You send out tenders. These boats were acquired. Were they tendered for? Or was it somebody talk to somebody who say, well, you know, we could organize something? Because in the interim, while the Atlantic provider and the barge were sailing to and from Tobago, I did a personal investigation along with Mr. Wong, who is one of the owners of the Atlantic provider, and we went up on the internet, and I sourced 4 different vessels. Now, after 4 decades on the port, I've been there since the Federal Maple and the Federal Palm, all the way up. So if I source something for you, I know exactly what I'm talking about. These papers were given to Mr. Grant, and we were told that it would be passed on to the Port Authority for overview. To this day, we haven't gotten an answer from either the port or Mr. Grant. So my question to the Port Authority and the government as well is, what is really going on behind closed doors? It's a very serious issue. And the issue with the boat right now, where you have people traveling on the boat at their own risk, lying on the ground and sleeping. Where have we come? Where are we going? These are the questions I need to get answered. As far as I'm concerned, we need to go deeper into this. How long is the cargo? We signed an agreement for a year. Can that agreement be relinquished? Can we look for another vessel in the interim? Because it's very clear that that boat is not capable of being a ROPAX. It has not been certified. You never sent a naval architecture up there to check the boat in the first place. So how was it passed? How was it recommended? And who agreed to all this? Those are that serious questions that need to be answered. Sorry.
Thank you. Floor is now open to members to pursue further questions. Senator Mark.
Good evening. Good afternoon, I should say. And welcome. First of all, the views expressed by Mr. Tadier, as well as Mr. Ahmed, and of course, Mr. Applewhite, have engaged this committee based on our hearings thus far. I want to ask, first of all, the Prime Minister of our country has said that there is something crooked about this whole deal, this whole arrangement. I wanted to ask Mr. Ahmed whether he had any views on that and whether your association would like to submit for the consideration of this committee any further recommendations to have this matter resolved in the interests of the truckers and your clients and the people of Tobago and Trinidad? And what would these recommendations be?
These recommendations were that we sat with them in 2014 at different management meetings in Trinidad. The recommendation that we gave them was, if you're looking for a vessel, look for a vessel that could carry at least 500 to 600 passengers. Look for a vessel between 80 to 100 cabins, sufficient washrooms. Reason being that the average Tobagonian like to go to Trinidad in the night, that he could get there early morning so he could have a full day to do what needs to be done. So by 5:30, you get off the vessel, do what needs to be done during the course of the day, and you get there back for 4 o'clock to take the 5 o'clock fast ferry to come back to Tobago. But it has gone now virtually to a halt, because when a fast ferry is taking 4 to 5 hours to get to Trinidad, you can't do anything. When we have a vessel, a cargo vessel that cannot carry passengers, the vessel, as far as we know, it was only licensed to carry 12 passengers. Right? When that is happening, you cannot get to Trinidad. So you end up putting extra pressure on the airport. When we were dealing with the Atlantic provider, drivers had to sleep in the airport whole night, because after you put your vehicle on the vessel and you leave to go, you'll get to the airport at least 12, you get down on the 12:30, 1 o'clock flight, you will then sleep in the airport, and then for the balance of the day, you run around. And it wasn't good for drivers. So based on that, we made the recommendation to them since before this problem came up with the cargo vessel. But I would like to go back a little. When Minister Sinanan took office in 2016, we spoke to him about that, and he said to us, there's no need to worry about the vessel because we are in a recessionary period. They won't pull that vessel at this time because they need the money. We would negotiate for a cheaper rate. We were in preventative mode at that time. We told him that the vessel is working fine for us. By 7 o'clock, at times, you're home if you're selling down your vehicle. By 8:30, 9 o'clock for the latest, you're in the house with your family. The drivers in Trinidad could pick up that vehicle and send it up for you, and everything was working fine. So we see no need to get rid of the ferry. Lo and behold, it was gotten rid of, and we were faced with a crisis that some of us are still under stress from up to this time. We also spoke to him about the fast ferry, telling him that we don't think that the fast ferry should be able to bring trucks because they are limping. And if we should go down that road, the entire island will crash because the vessels won't be able to make it. At that time, the Express had run aground, so it was only one vessel we had working. That was the T&T Spirit. Then the T&T Spirit had its mechanical problems, and sometime a day or two, it wasn't sailing. So we gave them certain preventative measures that they should have taken into consideration, but nobody did. But also, another thing that we spoke about, to every time we ask them what vessel is coming, and they will give us the name of a vessel, we will go up on the internet, this is the port board, and check it. And then we'll raise question, why this vessel, why that vessel? When we heard about the Cabo Star, not the Cabo Star, but the Ocean Flower 2, we asked them. And lo and behold, nobody said nothing. But looking yesterday at this on the television, I realized that since on the 17th, they were aware of the Ocean Flower 2 coming. But then, because I had asked the question, the Ocean Flower 2 was bought on the 26th of June this year, and they made the announcement on the 30th. So we believe that something is wrong in the procurement of that vessel. The Cabo Star, likewise, when it came, the lanes, and we tore the vessel, the lanes were freshly painted. That's for the trucks. But what we realize now, where the trucks are to be shackled, because of the size of trucks, one truck is taking up at least a lane and a half. So if you was to use 6 lanes, it's down sometime to 4. Other than that, you find the trucks are parked very close. So the workers on the port can't get between them to shackle them. So all of this is creating problem. People are saying that we have an overcapacity problem, but we don't think so. If we have overcapacity, right now we are taking 100 passengers on the vessel. We are not sure about the insurance, as we said before. And you have a vessel that could hold 300 trucks. Why bring a vessel to hold 300 trucks, but you only have accommodation for 100 passengers? The fast ferries are not working. People would like to travel with their vehicles to and from Trinidad. So the vessel must be underutilized.
Mr. Ahmed, when your association, and I should ask, did your association suggest or recommended to the Minister of Works and Transport the retention of the Superfast Galicia, given the fact that, as you said, it was providing good service to the truckers and to the people? Could you explain to this committee if that recommendation was made when you learned that this vessel was about to go, or developments were taking place that would have led it to want to discontinue its service? And what would have been the reaction, if any, or position adopted by the Minister of Works and Transport to whatever concerns you would have advanced in terms of retaining the Superfast Galicia?
Well, when we met with him in November, a letter was presented to him from the chamber, because we met at the chamber building at Breeze Hall, that there was an agreement for 18 months until November. And we said to him, why disrupt the operation? The vessel could stay until November, and in the interim, you all could look for a vessel. Well, that was not adhered to. And so we end up with the provider and the Trinity transporter, which didn't meet the needs of us at all. We made the recommendation that the Galicia should stay. The last night that the vessel sailed, on the 20th, when it got here on the 21st, when it was supposed to pull out, we didn't sleep that night, because we had a similar situation where a few years ago, a vessel left, I can't remember the name of the vessel, with all trucks and all the cargoes. The Pyramid. And we were not certain. So some drivers stayed, That day, they had asked us to put our vehicles on the vessel and they can't put the fast ferry because they had some issues and the vessel will leave at 6 o'clock the afternoon. But that vessel never left until 5 o'clock the morning. We stayed whole night, conversation on the phone, calling to find out what is happening with who stayed on the vessel. When the vessel got here and the trucks disembarked, I went home. I was called back within an hour saying that the vessel is about to leave and they don't intend to take any trucks to go back to Trinidad. So I instructed some of the members to go on the ramp, place their trucks on the ramp. Then we saw a Coast Guard vessel, which we never saw happen before in all the years that we are in Tobago, came close to the cruise ship and tied up there, and then an NP truck came and fueled that vessel. So that got drivers more enraged. We don't know if the vessel was put there to hold the superfast hostage. We cannot see. Then somebody had called and informed that that vessel will come to take charge of the superfast down to Trinidad, so the trucks will be able to board the vessel and they'll take back down the drivers. So that is what happened on that day.
Next, finally, could you share with us if you have the data or if you have done a rough estimation of the value of the losses experienced by truckers since this crisis has emerged on the sea bridge?
Well, it will run into millions because the Galicia was moving between 100 to 140 trucks, and the Atlantic provider was only moving 40 trucks. So, like for me, I accustomed making like 4 to 5 trips a week. And for that full 3 months that we had the Atlantic provider, I was only able to make 4 trips within that 3 months. And that I'm speaking for myself. Other drivers were not able to do anything. Well, it came up to a point that we were forced to use the badge. Right? Drivers were forced to put their vehicle on the badge. Otherwise, they were not being able to conduct their business. Members called and said that they had no other choice because the bank is coming down on them for their installment, so they'll have to put their vehicles on the badge. I didn't put my vehicle on the badge. When we met with the Prime Minister on Easter Monday and we spoke to him, he said if there's anything, he will be liable if anything go wrong with our vehicle. But nothing was done about that. Because a couple of drivers who used the badge, their vehicles, the engine got damaged because of the salt got into the manifold, and when they started the engine, they had problems with their vehicles.
Member Perry.
Thank you. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon.
You mentioned that you had a conversation with Minister Sinanan, and he spoke to you regards that, they will not pull the vessel, that they will negotiate a cheaper rate and the superfast Galicia would remain on the route. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes, what he said to us, that the owners won't pull the vessel because they need the money. We are under a recessionary period and vessels are cheap throughout the world right now. So they won't pull the vessel.
They won't pull
They won't pull the vessel.
That, and the vessel you're speaking of is the superfast
The superfast Galicia.
So in your understanding, the Galicia would have remained to continue the service that it had?
When we spoke to him, we were in a preventative mode. So when we saw the letter circulating to us that 18 months contract was there and the vessel would have been with us until October, we felt pleased. But we were hearing rumors that if the charter party agreement didn't sign, if the 18 months, if they didn't have a written contract, because they were on a month-to-month contract, and sometimes for the month, they were not paid on time because we were told at certain times to put our vehicles on the vessel, and we'll have to go up on the fast ferry. And sometime by 6, 7 o'clock, when we call the drivers who remain with their vehicles, they will tell us, well, they are now about to leave. Mr. Grant would have worked his magic, as he usually do, and get a check and pay the provider, and then the vessel would have sailed.
So you were happy with the performance of the Galicia on that route?
We had no problem.
Absolutely no problems.
There were a few minor problems, little things like the elevator, sometimes you had one washroom working, but we didn't have any mites, we didn't have no roaches, or we didn't have no rodents. And we had proper air-conditioned facility on the vessel, and sometimes we would have gotten a meal or two.
Did you speak to any other part official or any other public official concerning the issue of the Superfast Galicia at any time?
At the time, we spoke to Mr. Grant and the minister. Before that, we were liaising with Minister Cadiz when the Superfast came, because what had happened, the Warrior Spirit was taking sometime up to 11 to 16 hours to come to Tobago. We will usually have to put our vehicle on it. It will leave here sometime like 9, 10 o'clock in the morning, travel on the fast ferry on evening to go down and get to Trinidad, offload, take off vehicles off the Warrior when she gets in there at sometime 12, 1 o'clock in the night, and get back there for 9 o'clock the next morning for the Warrior to sail back to Tobago. So when the Galicia came, we were happy that we didn't have to be awake for those long hours anymore.
You know, you mentioned that you've asked that you participate in any future recommending of either the fast ferry or cargo vessels.
Yes.
Right? There is a tender out now for a replacement for the Ocean Flower. Did your association participate in recommending any of the issues on that vessel?
No, we didn't.
You were not invited?
We were not
asked?
invited. We weren't asked.
Okay.
You see, what if I could add, one of the reasons why we want to participate in that decision, we are the end users of the vessel. And if we had a choice, the Cabo Star would not have been here today because of the problems that we are faced with. We asked them for a vessel that would carry at least 400 or 500 passengers. We asked for a vessel with at least 80 to 100 cabins, proper cafeteria, a sick room, proper trained personnel, because you had incident that people died on the Galicia. You had incident that people died on also the Warrior Spirit. So from the association standpoint, we need to have proper trained personnel, medical personnel on those vessels once they are running within Trinidad and Tobago over 4 or 5 hours.
Now, you mentioned that Senator Mark asked in terms of the economic cost that you and your association and your members have had to bear since the departure of the Galicia. In the hearings over the last day and a half, a comment was made by the minister that when the proposal for the Galicia came to him, he was not in a position to put the taxpayers of this country to bear a $200 million bill over the next 5 years. Now, knowing what you know and the experience that we would have had over the last couple of months, can you agree that that cost is something that is comparable to what you and your association have been experiencing?
We will say yes, and the minister should also realize that the sea bridge within Trinidad and Tobago is like the highway to Point 14 or to any part of Trinidad. The sea bridge is like our highway that we conduct our business. And when there's a problem on that sea bridge, it takes a toll on our pocket very heavily.
And lastly, if you had to make a suggestion in terms of, because you now asked whether the Cabo Star can be removed because clearly it's not working.
It's not working.
It's not working.
It's not
and
working.
as far as I understand, there's a contract in place for 1 year. And I also understand that should that contract be broken, there's a hefty price that the taxpayers will have to pay also. But if you had to send one message to the minister today to bring an immediate resolution to that problem, what would it be?
Replace the boat, because it's definitely not working for us. You can't shower on the boat, no washroom facilities. This will cause people to get sick, because when you need to go to the bathroom, you need to go to the bathroom. After you travel whole night, and then you go and pick up your load to hustle back there for 12 o'clock. You will take a shower this afternoon before you leave home. And then you wouldn't be able to shower until tomorrow night when you get back home. I don't think in this day and age that we should be living like that in a modern society today. So my recommendation to him will be, get rid of that vessel and get rid of it now.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon. My line of questioning is taking on the perspective of the end user, which are you guys. I've heard throughout your contribution just now that what we end up having is a certain number of vehicles that could go on the boat, which is usually more than the number of passengers that it could take.
Yeah.
So you would end up with drivers having to put the trucks on the boat and then find a way down to Trinidad to take them off. Just for my clarification, the Warrior Spirit, was it better than the Warrior Spirit in that was there enough space for drivers and truckers?
Yes, the Warrior Spirit had enough space for drivers. The Warrior Spirit had roughly about 15 bathrooms. You had cabins. So, and what we usually do, if a cabin with 4 or 5 bunks, 4 bunks, drivers, we will share. You will share, you'll come in, you'll use the washroom, you'll be able to take a shower and things like that. But on the Cabo Star so far, we are unable to take any shower because cabins are not made available to us at this present time.
All right, what I was trying to gauge is exactly how far back it went. So I'm assuming that when we went to the Galicia, that switch started to happen where you had not enough space for drivers, but enough space for truckers.
Yes, you had enough space for drivers, but not the lorrymen. When we had the Panorama or the Gelton, Teaston, the Sonia, you had a vessel that could have taken at least 800 passengers, and this was ideal for Tobagonians. So it could have taken both drivers, heavy cargo, light vehicles, passengers. So that is the ideal vessel we need to work the sea bridge within Trinidad and Tobago.
All right, and the reason I'm asking those questions because I'm trying to figure out, based on all of the vessels that we've had over the years, if we've had something that we can look at that was a best fit that is needed for our particular sea bridge. And I'm hearing that the Sonia was probably the best fit for our sea bridge in terms of the truckers that could go on it, the number of vessels that could go on it, and I guess the comfortability of the users. Is that correct to say?
Yes. The Panorama was also comfortable. Only, the only problem with the Panorama at the time, the demand for cargo in Tobago went up, and the Panorama could not have taken the amount of cargo. The ideal situation for Tobago is to have 2 cargo vessels, like we had when the Gelton and Teaston were here, that one leave Trinidad at 2, the other one leave Tobago 11. So you had traffic flowing both ways. At those days, we didn't have the fast ferries.
Okay, because I just wanted to, like I said, know if we have specs that we can work with when we are looking for vessels so that we know what model we need to use, given that we've used it in the past. So you're saying the ideal situation is to have two boats,
Two boats.
both traveling at times. Okay, great.
Right, but we had also gave them some recommendation in 2014 when we sat on the committee that the vessel that, when you look going out for a vessel, or if you're going to build a vessel, look for a vessel that could hold at least 500 passengers, something with 80 to 100 cabins, proper cafeteria, sick room, and things like those. Those were the recommendations.
Have you all done a cost analysis on that? I know it may be out of your purview, but just for your information. So, for example, you have an ideal vessel. What is the cost of that vessel as opposed to anything else? Is there any kind of cost analysis
No,
out there?
we didn't do a cost analysis on that. But the recommendation that we gave them, if you're going to custom build a vessel that could include these specifications.
Excuse me? Could I interject? Concerning what you just asked? I believe that I said it earlier on. I brought documents to Mr. Grant's attention with all those facts and figures. And I believe a price was given to him as well. I don't know the actual price. But the vessel was capable of handling trucks, cars, passengers, cabins. In other words, the vessel is a combination of a cargo vessel and a ferry at the same time. They had two sets of documents for two separate vessels with all those configurations. It was given to Mr. Grant. As like I said before, and I will say again, where the documents went, if it ever reached to the Port Authority aboard, I am none the wiser. But I know for a fact, because the documents that I gave Mr. Grant didn't only have specs. They had photographs of the entire vessel, from the engine room all the way back up. Elevators, the works. Where those documents are right now, I don't have a clue, but I can always get a copy if needed.
Could we get a copy of that? Yes?
Yes, I can make that available within a week.
Chris? Yeah. Okay, good afternoon, gentlemen. Even though I am here in my capacity as a senator on a joint select committee, I am also a member of the government. So just if the chairman could permit me to make one statement, that I share the pain of the people of Tobago, of what they have gone through over the last couple of months or more. And from what you are articulating, that the pain continues, probably to a lesser extent. And I also share that pain on behalf of the government. I am not here speaking for the Minister of Works and Transport, but the government is making its best effort to get this thing right in the shortest possible time. Having said that, there is one reference you made to Minister Sinanan, which when he appeared before the Joint Select yesterday, he said that he didn't want to subject the state to a $200 million cost without a proper tendering process. And that was really the qualifying phrase, because it was the opinion then that we cannot ad infinitum rule over existing contracts and the state incurring tremendous cost in that regard without a proper tendering process, especially since procurement legislation has been passed and will be proclaimed within the next couple of months. But let's get back down to the operations. The passenger capacity at the Cabo Star is 100, you said?
Yes,
About 100.
About 100, but based on the information that we got, that vessel only supposed to be carrying 12 passengers, not 100, because when it made the maiden voyage to Tobago with, or when it made the first voyage to Tobago with vehicles, no passengers were not allowed to travel on that trip. But to go back down, Mr. Grant called and said the vessel will be able to accommodate passengers because they got to do with the insurance. And I'd like to clear one thing. I told the second vice president, Mr. Tadier, that he should not be submitting no documents to Mr. Grant. They should be looking for when the tender process is open and submit the documents as a tender document, because we don't want, Mr. Grant has been very good to the association, and to any problem that we have with the vessel, we could call him and he will try his best to address it. So in the future, Mr. Tadier, if you have any documents, prefer when you look, the tender process is open, submit a tender and don't pass it to any politician or any public servant. Submit a tender.
Okay.
Appreciate
But
that.
but as we speak, the Cabo Star is authorized to carry 100 passengers. Am I correct?
That is what they are saying, 100 passengers.
And
But
what was the capacity of the Superfast Galicia for passengers?
102.
So even Stephen.
Even Stephen, but we were certain with the Superfast Galicia that we didn't have a problem with licensing and certification. We are not certain with the Cabo Star what is happening with certification for license to carry passengers, because based on the document that passed through our hands, the vessel was only allowed to carry 12 passengers. Reason being, or might have been, it's a ro-ro and not a ro-pax. And where the vessel are custom working, they will put their vehicle, put the cargo on it, travel to the other destination, and take off that vessel. We don't know if that is the reason why there is only 2 toilets and 1 is working, while on the Warrior Spirit, you had at least 15 toilets on the Warrior Spirit.
And how many on the Superfast?
The Superfast had 3 toilets outside for the public, and each cabin had bathroom and washroom facility in it.
Okay, so I'm really concerned with what is happening now, because I know you guys went through pain.
And
okay?
still going through.
And still going through, but I will venture to say probably a little less. But having said that, is there a capacity issue now? Do you have truckers who want to go to Trinidad, come back to Tobago, or vice versa, that cannot get a booking?
You still have a standby list, because if the 100 spaces are filled with passengers, your truck will have to, you'll have to go on a standby list. And if you are not traveling, if a driver isn't traveling, it's only then the standby list, or if they didn't reach the 100 quota, then a passenger, then our other driver will be able to travel. And I will also want to say one thing. Yesterday, Minister Sinanan said that he didn't want to put the country through a 200 million. 4 tenders went out, and to the best of our knowledge, the Galicia won those tenders the 4 times, and those tenders, that tender process was scrapped. So we don't know the reason why that process was scrapped.
As a committee member, okay, because the Port Authority, the board of the Port Authority, the management of the Port Authority, the Ministry of Works and Transport, and the minister, present and former, were very heavily questioned in those regard yesterday. But the issue is, I just want to make it clear in my mind and the public to know, is that as we speak, is there an issue with terms of capacity for cargo between Trinidad and Tobago?
No, we don't have a problem with capacity. The problem will only arise when you can only take 100 persons on that vessel. So unless you put your vehicle and you wait for the fast ferry, or you venture to the airport, that's when you have a problem. After the 100 passengers is there, your vehicle could go, but you won't be able to travel. So we have a capacity problem for passengers, but not for vehicles.
But then you also said that the capacity of the superfast was 102. So in other words, that same issue would have arisen with the superfast, because after
not
you
really.
reach 102 passengers, the other vehicles or trucks will have to go without the driver.
Well, some truck come without drivers, but when the superfast was here, we had two fast ferry working. So the average person would not try to get down to Trinidad in the night, because you had a fast ferry leaving Tobago at 4 on evenings. So you knowing that the superfast could only take 100, and trucks and vans, T vehicles has first preference. So you who have a car will make sure you get back to Trinidad on the fast ferry 4 o'clock. Or if you didn't get back, you'll put on your vehicle, head to the airport. We didn't have that stress on this air bridge, because we had the fast ferry taking the excess passengers.
That is why I say the pain still exists, but
Yes.
at a lower level.
Yes.
Okay, because, but I just wanted to make the point clear that there is no capacity issue as we speak, as we look forward to the more medium-term solution. But my office is on the 26th floor at Tower C, right up at the penthouse.
Yeah.
And I just look down and watch the cargo start load every day. And there aren't much trucks. And I'm being told by the Port Authority that there's overcapacity, and all the capacity is not filled.
What is happening with that overcapacity? Because the Cabo Star leaves at 12:30, when we get off that vessel at 7:30 on morning, you cannot make a turnaround to get back to the port for 10:30. So what you will find happening, drivers who would usually have traveled, go pick up their goods and get back. They can't do it.
Extra day, everything taken.
Everything taken an extra day. So although the capacity is there, because of the time that the vessel is sailing, the capacity cannot be filled, because the trucks can't make their pickup. Unless you are going to make one pickup, but the average member from the association will make 4, 5, or 6 stops to get back to the port. And as we all know, if there's an accident on the highway, in 1 minute, traffic backed up for miles. And when you run into that, if you reach rain, if they're doing a road check, right? Before, we used to be in places like Penal, 6 o'clock in the morning. We can't do that now. And we would like to get back to that hour. We also like the vessel to go back up at Queen's Wharf instead of the Hyatt, because we realize of the congestion. That night that I spoke about, on one night where the vessel sailed late because of a cruise ship, traffic backed up as far as the Beetham. Police had also come out to direct that traffic. Also, we are asking our members not to park by the Hyatt or on Ryson Road. But sometimes they have no other choice, because of the time the vessel is leaving now and the time that they have to get to that vessel.
So, but do you have continuous dialogue with the Port Authority with some of the new challenges or the consequential challenges of the engagement of the Cabo Star? Because the Port Authority has procured a vessel. Hopefully it will provide some interim relief until the actual medium-term contract for the 2 years, I think, is engaged, which will have better specs and hopefully source a more reliable service. But I think what you should attempt to do, if I could use my office to encourage the port to do, is to have some continuous dialogue. So if there are issues of sailing time and operations and logistical issues, which are really operational issues, it's not the remit of a committee like this. We're looking for what are the fundamental problems of the operation, its viability, how do we sustain it as a country, What is the cost structure related to that? What is the subsidy rates in terms of what the state pays for each truck? When you look at the income stream from what you're charging and to what the charter party has to pay, all these are strategic issues. But the issues you are dealing with, to me, could be obviously sorted out between dialogue between the port's management in particular. That you have to go to the board.
Well,
Just talk to the port management, and if they say they don't want to talk with you, well, report it to somebody in higher authority.
We have a very good rapport with the port. When Mr. Grant was there, any problem we will call him. Now it's Mr. Hafiz, because yesterday morning I also got a call at 3 o'clock that the line to use the washroom was very long. I called Mr. Hafiz later that morning, and we spoke. He said that he would look into it. Yesterday evening after he left the committee meeting, I called him and I said to him, as far as I understand, the situation still arises with the one toilet. He said he spoke to them that morning and he's going to make some call concerning the washroom facilities and get back to us. So that liaison and that rapport is there with the Port Authority and ourselves.
Only with Hafiz.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to ask.
I will
Mr.
just
Chairman.
break here for a while.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to follow from Mr. Khan's questions, some of the answers you all produced. And I think it would be remiss of me if I didn't share this information that we received from the port, right? And I will list it for you. The cargo vessels, now these are cargo vessels, Warrior Spirit, Superfast Galicia, Cabo Star. According to the passenger capacity for every Warrior Spirit, it was 130 passengers, and this is, I'm quoting from an official document here, 130 passengers including crew. The Superfast Galicia, the capacity was 120 passengers including crew. The MV Cargo Star, 130 passengers including crew. The vehicle capacity, MV Warrior Spirit, 80 commercial vehicles. MV Superfast Galicia, 200 vehicles, which includes 140 trucks, 30 vans or pickup, and 30 cars. The MV, the Cabo Star, 300 vehicles, which could be 240 trucks, 30 vans, pickups, and 30 cars. Now, this is an official document which was submitted by to the Joint Select Committee from the Port Authority. Just to clear up some of the issues that will be, because I was saying 100 to and from, so please take note of this information. And this information, if it is submitted by the Port Authority, it would carry for insurance purposes. Now, I see what I have been listening carefully is coming from Mr. Robert Tadio. You have been quoting information which was submitted to us, the Joint Select Committee, by one Nairi Alfonso. And that is her quotation. But I am quoting from you information that we received from the Port Authority of Trinidad and Tobago. So, based on what I've just said, you all could make your judgment. I'm quoting from the competent, reliable source of the capacity. So therefore, we see the capacity is the same. But I realize from the submissions that you all made, the problem is not really with the capacity, but with other prevailing circumstances on that particular boat. And in going forward, that boat has already been contracted for 1 year. Do you wish to make submissions to the Port Authority for the better usage of that boat?
What I will say with that, okay, it's already contracted for 1 year. We need to get the air conditions working. We need to have the vessel pull off the route for probably 3 days and have it properly fumigated. So we'll get rid of the mites, the roaches, and the other rodents. We need to have the lines for the vessel properly remarked, so the trucks will fit on it more comfortable, because probably where it was working, they were using smaller trucks. The truck and trailers will take up at least 1.5 lane right now when you are parking. You're still going to have a problem. We are not certain if the vessel was certified, because we understand about 2 Thursdays ago, they were supposed to do a recertification of all the life raft and other things. There was some welding taking place on the vessel for at least 4 days, 24/7, because the cranes that they had could not get down those life boats and things like that. We are on the vessel on a daily basis. It's not that we might sail on the vessel today and we didn't sail for the next 4 or 5 months. We are on the vessel on a daily basis, and we make certain observation with what is happening on those vessels. We are the end users of those vessels. And when you say that the port say 130, including crew, as soon as there is a guy there checking, and as soon as you reach 80 or 100, nobody else can come on. So your vehicle could go on, and now, before we'd be able to come up on the fast ferry, but now you have to head to the airport. When you are in Tobago, if you try to get on the fast ferry to go down, if you didn't get to go down the night, the fast ferry won't get in until 10 or 11 o'clock the next morning. So basically, you cannot do anything in Trinidad for that entire day.
Certainly, the points that you suggested or you raised a while ago, it will be picked up, because I just quoted from the competent sources that the capacity of those cargo vessels were as stated, and surely we would have your issues dealt with.
What we'd also like immediately is if that time could go back to 2 o'clock, the departure from Port of Spain. We are not certain if the vessel could make the run in 4.5 hours. That is the time that we need to sail from Trinidad to Tobago. And we made this abundantly clear that once you're looking for a vessel, look for a vessel that could make the run within 4.5 hours. What was happening before? When you're on a vessel for 8 hours without water or without food, the Coast Guard should have come and ground that vessel, because you with your pirogue, if you're going out there and you don't have sufficient food to last you a day or two, the Coast Guard usually send you back ashore. And we traveling on a vessel between Trinidad and Tobago for 8-9 hours. We are on that vessel without no water and nothing to eat.
Could I interject?
Thank you, gentlemen. Do you like to make any closing remarks?
I would like to interject on the information that she has just given us. On the 2 vessels prior to the Cabo Star, I want the committee to know very clear, those 2 vessels, the Galaxia and the Warrior Spirit, is Ro-Pax vessels. They are licensed to carry passengers. The Cabo Star is a Ro-Ro vessel. The query right now is, are they licensed to carry the passengers that are boarding the vessel right now? Now, the facts that were given to her includes passengers, but those passengers can only be accommodated if it's a Ro-Pax certified vessel. What I brought up earlier is that that vessel is a Ro-Ro, cargo and crew only, but they have passengers aboard the boat. Do you have the specific insurance? Was the boat rectified to be a Ro-Pax, or is it still a Ro-Ro? If it is still a Ro-Ro, something is definitely wrong. As regards to Mr. Khan's query about capacity, the port has a system where they sell tickets. When you buy a truck ticket, you automatically pay for a passenger ticket. All right? That is how the ticketing system works on the port. So at the end of the day, if they sell 100 trucks with 100 drivers, that is 100 passengers. Therefore, there's no more room for passengers. This has happened on the fast ferry already. And if you want to send up your vehicle, You send it up at your own risk, but you're not allowed on the boat because they have no more passenger space on the system. That is where the lack of capacity comes in, to answer your question earlier. As regards to the information from report, I am questioning the information given on the Cabo Star, being that my information up to yesterday is that the vessel is still under a RoRo agreement, certified under a RoRo agreement in Panama, and under questionable means as well. That is the information I have to hand.
Port Authority is saying that the Cabo Star is certified.
Excuse me, member.
Sorry,
We're
okay.
taking closing comments.
My apologies.
I would like to rewind a bit. In 2014, when we were discussing vessels with the then Transport Minister, Stephen Cadiz, he told us, under no circumstances will a vessel older than 10 years will be gracing our shores to be a part of the sea bridge. Now we have a vessel 29 years old. In the unlikely event of an emergency, and should there be damage or injury, whom would be held liable? Because we don't know who is Bridgeman Service. Who could the truckers hold liable for damage or injury?
Oh,
In closing, we want to thank you all for coming. We want to thank the committee, and we hope that we will be able to have that our recommendations will be taken into consideration whenever they are looking for vessels that are input from the truckers, the Tobago Chamber, and other people like that, who are the end users of the vessel, that we will be considered, and our thoughts will be considered in acquiring any vessel for the use between the sea bridge of Trinidad and Tobago. We thank you for giving us this opportunity to speak this evening, for those who didn't have a voice to speak, and I hope that we were able to speak on their behalf. Last week, Monday, we saw that the minority leader tried or swam to Toko to show the point that this is the situation, and it's really the situation, what is happening now in Tobago. I trust and I pray God that the one fast ferry we have limping at this time don't go down. Otherwise, Tobago will be cut off, the sea bridge will be cut off, because the Cabo Star cannot take passengers. They are not taking children on the Cabo Star. They are not taking women and children on the Cabo Star at this present time. Thank you.
thank you. We'll now suspend for 3 minutes to allow the next group to come forward.
broadcasting on 105.5 FM.
All right, we are about to resume our inquiry. Welcome, and I would ask our two new guests to introduce themselves, starting with the lady.
Diane Haddad, the chairman of the Inter-Island Transport Committee of the Tobago Division of the Trinidad and Tobago Chamber of Industry and Commerce, past president of the chamber as well.
Sir?
Assemblyman Farley Augustine, area representative for the electoral district of Palot-Riviere-Lansome Speyside, and I'm here representing the minority leader, Mr. Watson Duke, and the minority council.
And I just wish to remind you that your contribution this afternoon is covered by parliamentary privilege. And which member is ready to start? Member Ferry.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Good afternoon, ma'am, gentlemen, sir. I have two very short questions, and I think you as the user, the end user of the service of that sea bridge, air bridge to an extent, you are the ones who are feeling the brunt of this.
Can I speak?
Sure.
Don't mind me cutting you.
Sure.
Mr. Chairman, through you, the order seemed to have changed a little bit. I'm not so sure if, and I'd imagine you're probably very tired. The others got to have opening remarks and introduce whatever they were to say. And,
Would you like to be afforded that opportunity?
oh, please, thank you, sir.
Okay, I will suspend the member's question and allow you to do so.
Thank you, sir. Could I ask a question to everybody? We submitted documents on Monday morning early, and I knew we were late, but I brought it on myself. And it wasn't very long to read, but did you all get them?
Yes, we did.
Did everybody read them? The CDs that everybody had, I know that was long and painful to listen to, but did you all get any chance to go through the CD? A few minutes? Okay. I just want to say that the Tobago division of the Trinidad and Tobago Chamber of Industry and Commerce plays an important role on the island of Tobago by representing and promoting business activity for its members, and therefore this affects the entire island's performance once engaged by the leaders. Chamber members often meet to discuss and attempt to shape the policy that relates to the business and overall economic environment. The Chamber's role with the port, and I will just shorten it now, is that for the past 20 years, we have actually participated with a fantastic relationship which really blossomed in the last, I want to say, 8 to 10 years, where the Chamber continuously had engaged meetings with the Port Authority management, the boards, and the ministers of the day. The Chamber's role would have been to deal with a lot of the things that you all would have had, what you would have heard in the previous session, in terms of operational issues. And I think we listed all of those for you: scheduling, infrastructure, equipment, types of vessels required, and so. And it isn't until October 2015 that our relationship just went numb. There were letters attached to what was presented to you which showed our attempts, and this is just some of the letters I gave, our attempts to reach out to the then board, management, and ministers in terms of them relating to us, for us to find out new administration, what's the direction, and where are we going from here. We were probably very much ignored, and it wasn't until a number of things started to become public that we were engaged. So I want to put that on the table for the beginning, and further to that, there were a number of things that were said over the last couple of days that I would like corrected with regards to the ferry. One of the things that I keep hearing over and over in people's presentations is that the fast ferries were new. The fast ferries, when they came here, were not new. One was already 5 years old, by our information, and one was already 10 years old. So we could put it off the table that they were not new vessels. And therefore, the maintenance that we keep speaking about would have been a lot higher in terms of requirements, because Trinidad and Tobago didn't get the proper life of the vessel if it was supposed to be a new vessel, right? The other thing that I heard a lot of is that the Cabo Star is working within schedule. That was something that Mr. Purdy said yesterday, and that, things were happening nicely. Mr. Hamid and they tried to explain, let us just get quickly down to it. We are accustomed to a 2 o'clock departure from Trinidad, arrival somewhere between 7 and 7:30 in the night in Tobago. The ferry must now be offloaded. Truckers go on, turn around, get to the warehouses or get to their points of destination for delivery, turn around and get back to the port between 9 and 10 o'clock. The gate closes for departure at 11 p.m. That is not happening. What happened is on the arrival of the Cabo Star, we were asked, I was called, there was a meeting at the port, and I was the point of contact. I was called by Mr. Grant and said that they were in a meeting, and they wanted to know if we were prepared to give some teething time for the vessel, and if we could have departed at 12 o'clock, 12 noon, as the Atlantic provider. I said, absolutely not, that was not working, but we did badge on the phone and come down to 12:30. The 12:30 departure, the agreement was to allow for teething problems with the arrival of the vessel and it getting accustomed to the journey and so. However, we agreed to a 3-week timeline, and the chamber has since written to the port asking to revert to the 2 o'clock departure. Now, let me fix that part, because the boat of itself is actually taking an hour just to start to depart, because my understanding is that the anchors are going in pretty much deep into the seabed, and if they just take off at normal speed, it will rip up and destroy the seabed. So they are actually losing 1 hour just to pull off from berthing space. And we were being asked to accommodate this 1 hour. So the boat is taking about 7 hours to get to Tobago from time of departure, coming in. So what everybody really is looking for is for us to move forward to make up for the inefficiency of the vessel. So it will come in at the same time and depart at 11 p.m. And I guess that's what Mr. Amid was trying to clear up with why they're losing a day, Mr. Khan. Right? So the vessel is not working within specs. So we also have the fast ferries that are not fast anymore. I think we've already heard about that. They are taking between 4.5 to 5 hours. So that's as bad as a cargo vessel. And those things needed to be addressed. Now, I want to just take us back a little bit. In 2013, December the 7th, 2013, the day stays in my mind. It was another one of our episodes where one of the ferries broke down on us. That one was the Warrior Spirit. And in it breaking down on us on that day, it was already, let me say, tugging along. It was lagging along for months. And we would have spent endless nights with the boat coming in at 12 p.m., 12 o'clock, 1 a.m., different hours. We had sleepless months. Unfortunately, nobody understands, but the Tobagonian is deprived of their family time and social life on an evening because of this inefficiency that continues to go on. Staff leave, or the truckers would leave their place of work. Our businesses are closed at a particular time, 4:30, whatever, but we have to wait for this boat to come in, get trucks, offload, and go back and put these trucks on the boat. So we are really not finished business until that boat departs in the night. So the average Tobagonian business owner works from in the morning until that hour of the night every day that they do business. And I'm only putting this in to drop it in so that we understand the social aspect of it. When the Superfast Galicia came in, the first day I remember my staff member calling me, "Miss Haddad, I am home and it's 8:05. Stained in my memory. Why? The boat actually arrived here in 4 hours. It came in at 6 p.m. and we were offloaded and turned around and went back. And at 8:05, he was able to get back his truck on the boat to depart. 11 o'clock departure was fine. That had nothing to do with us. We were able to go home, but the job was done. I'm just putting that on the table so we understand. Further to that, after the 7th of December, when that happened with the Warrior Spirit and we had the breakdown, a boat came in the meantime. It was called the MV Salos or Palos. I can't quite remember, because it was another memorable night that the boat had to be guided in, and it took very long, and they started to call it the MV Haddad. Why? Mr. Cadiz and them, at that time, the port would have had to look for some makeup vessel just to carry us, because this was our only cargo vessel that went down on us. That boat worked here for about a month, and another memorable occasion about it was the union had refused to offload the vessel because they couldn't see or whatever. And I remember Mr. Ray Thomas being on the port, one of our members on the same committee with me, and I said to him, Bogey, as we call him, let's get, the lights that they put on their head. And we spoke to the union, and my words to them were, listen, the food here is not for Trinidad. It's actually for Tobagonians. So let's put all these things aside and ensure that the vessel is offloaded tonight. So we went and got the lights from Mr. Thomas's warehouse, and we contributed it to the port to make sure that the action happened. I'm putting that for you, sir, and the team, so you understand how involved we have to be on a daily basis to make sure that life happens for us. After that, so this is the timeline now within the departure of the Warrior Spirit, which came back on, and that boat was off the route for a very long time. Our understanding is it had lost its engines. Its engines were gone. The Superfast Galicia came in, and I just gave you an example of what transpired, how it worked. There were 5 issues that everybody keeps speaking about the Superfast Galicia. The issues were not with the Superfast Galicia. The issues were with Trinidad and Tobago's porting infrastructure. So the issues were the boat was too big and it could not berth. Our dredging needs to take place. And this is the normal size of vessels that are now in today's world. This is not something that's super happy that Trinidad and Tobago does not deserve or cannot work with. The other issue was that it was costing too much money. Today we have seen for ourselves that that is under the table. The third part of it, and the issues were so invalid that the issues dealt with Trinidad and Tobago, not the vessel. The vessel had the knot speed that we needed. The vessel had the cargo capacity with the surplus, which actually was a planned, and when I say planned, it was part of Tobago's economic development plan, if we had followed it, that we should have been growing and therefore needing more capacity. So a vessel with more capacity is not a bad thing for Tobago and Tobagonians. It's actually one of the forethoughts that you should have in planning your economic development. Because of the excess capacity, the chamber would have met with the Port Authority, and we would have engaged them to say, okay, how can we use the excess capacity to benefit Tobago and Tobagonians? And one of the things were that we will ask the people who do certain hardware items if they were willing to get a, let's call it a preferential rate, to get blocks and so over, so that the construction sector could enjoy better prices for their construction in Tobago, because we know that there's a premium on what it costs to do construction in Tobago. So it isn't that we had this boat that was too big, that was not good enough for Tobago. The Superfast worked and did what it had to do. We were invited to the port by the then minister and his team. We were carried to the port to see how the boat will work, and we had to meet with customs, so we understood what had to happen for us to enjoy the facility and therefore put things in place with our staff and the truckers to ensure that we weren't breaking any of the laws of the country going into the international area, which is what you would have heard about yesterday as well. As to the fence that had to be put up, we had to get special passes on our trucks and things like that. So all of those things, this is the relationship the chamber enjoyed with the Port Authority. So I wanted to clear up those, and I think we could take me on from there.
Thank you very much, Chair. Let me take it from a different perspective and start by saying that the Minority Council sees this as a duty more than a privilege. If it is that we are public officials, then accounting and responding to the fears, the issues, the concerns of the public must become paramount and must become part of our duty. And so we are happy to fulfill our duty as the alternative government here on the island of Tobago. I also want to say that Trinidad and Tobago is a 55-year-old country with a 128-year-old problem. What do I mean by that? 55 years of independence, yes, but this issue of conquering 22 miles or so has gone all the way back to 1889 or before we even became a union. And in 2017, we are unfortunately still at the same point. For us in the Minority Council, upon assuming office in January of this year, we began highlighting this issue. In fact, we were screaming to the highest heavens that we needed to do something and something quickly in order to save the Tobago economy, because we foresaw that should the inter-island transportation services, and that includes both the cargo and the ferry service, that should those go down, that we will end up at a point where the Tobago's economy will enter a state of comatose. And in February, at our very first sitting, I could recall there being protestations from the business community. Ms. Haddad, I believe, was there with her team. We hastily tried to get the House to give leave to discuss a more urgent matter, and of course, we know how the politics of that goes. It never happened. We have been having village meetings. We walked all the way from Roxborough to Scarborough, some 25 miles. We did everything possible to bring this to the fore of national focus, until eventually we decided a few weeks ago, 2 weeks or so ago, to have a swim protest and to throw ourselves in the harbor in Scarborough and start swimming for as far as we could swim, as a way of capturing the national attention and saying to the nation that this Tobago issue, quote unquote, is really a national issue, and that we ought to have a national conversation about it. And so we are happy that we are having a national conversation about it. Notwithstanding, there's some impacts that we tend to forget. Yes, we know the impact on the hotel and tourism industry, the impact in terms of food security, the impact in terms of the business community. But in reality, the inter-island ferry service and the cargo service serves us in many ways. In fact, our life on this island and the sanctity of this union called Trinidad and Tobago depends on an efficient inter-island transportation service, both cargo and ferry. We have on this island school students, some part-time, some full-time, who actually work and live on the island of Tobago, but who must travel to Trinidad for studies, sometimes twice a week, 3 times a week, sometimes 1 or 2 mornings, sometimes on a weekend. And we have been having students missing exams, students who can't even show up for professional training, for work training. Recently, I encountered an issue where we had some gentlemen training for the police service, and they had some final examinations, couldn't get to travel. And that's how real it is for us. There are folks traveling to Trinidad for medical issues. And most times people use the inter-island ferry service to get into Port of Spain, because Port of Spain is the easiest point to where we need to go for business, and also to manage things like medical treatments. Because though we have a hospital on the island, it's literally impossible for that hospital to provide 100% of the possible medical treatment that you will require. And so traveling to Trinidad is part of it. Legal requirements. If we need our land titles to be done, then our lawyers must get to Trinidad to file those papers. We also have the social impact, and Ms. Haddad spoke to some of the social impact and how it's affecting familial ties. And the reality is there are about 300,000 Tobagonians living in Trinidad. And having this connectivity is meaningful. And it's important for us to understand that not just the Tobago businesses suffer, but the Trinidad businesses also suffer. Because remember, we are purchasing goods and services from Trinidad businesses. In fact, the truckers alone may be spending approximately $100,000 every single day. And that's a significant loss in money, and in economic terms, that is unproductive. Now, there are some things must happen, and I want to put them on the table early on in terms of how we get to the place where we never return to this place. Firstly, and you may take this as a political statement, but that's fine. I'm a politician now, and that goes with the territory. Firstly, there is no question in our minds that we need to fire the board, the entire board. And of course, if I was in charge of the cabinet, I will also fire the minister, because you have seen ministers fired for less. But I will start with the board. And perhaps if it was my decision to make, I'll drop the board in the bokas and ask them to swim, just like we did. We need to also look at the fact that the central government, of which you are a part, must see the inter-island transportation services as critical public service, akin to what the subway is in New York, or the tube and the bus service is to London, or even the ZRs to Barbados, or the Chichi buses in Jamaica, or a red band going to Arima. That's how critical inter-island transportation service is, and it must be seen as critical public service of which the central government has a role to play. So it should not be seen as Tobago and Tobagonians begging for a working boat or for a boat that functions well, but it must be seen as a critical public service need that we can't allow to ever go down. I don't think New York City governors will sit and watch the subway down for a week or 2 weeks or become infrequent and be okay with that, because that system is tied intricately to the economy. We must also understand, and this is a position that we hold, that if it is, and I'm using an analogy here, you are purchasing school shoes for your students and or for your child to return to school, and the average parent will take the child to the store, have the child try on the shoe, walk around in the shoe, see if they like the design, if it's comfortable, if it fits, and all of that will be done before a purchase is made. It is ridiculous that we have been engaging fast ferries and cargo boats without truly asking the stakeholders what will work best, because the stakeholders are the ones who are to use it. And if we are looking at the stakeholders who must use these services, then the stakeholders that come to mind by majority are those that reside here on the island of Tobago. And we are placing it out there for public discussion now that what needs to happen is that we need to move swiftly to that point whereby we amend the law so that the THA can fully recognize number 16 of the 5th schedule of the THA Act of 1996. If you look at that act, in the 5th schedule, number 16, it says quite clearly that the THA has responsibility for infrastructure, including sea and air transportation, wharves and airports, and public utilities. However, everything in that act is subject to cabinet. And so where there is a cabinet-appointed board, the cabinet-appointed board supersedes. But we have to get to the point where after specs are sought, where after the vessels are shortlisted, that list of vessels must be sent back to the Tobago House of Assembly, and let us debate it. Let us sit in the House and debate it, debate the specs, give assemblymen the opportunity to meet with stakeholders like Ms. Haddad and the team at the Chamber of Commerce, the truckers, those in the agriculture industry, hoteliers, etc., and arrive at a best decision for the island and by extension for the country. Because we are most disadvantaged whenever this system goes down. We are most disadvantaged whenever people play the fool, as is quite evident given the last 2 days of investigations that you've had. And so I don't want to ever have to swim, and when I tired swim, try to kayak and turn over in the ocean, and then jet ski and boat and swim again to Trinidad. And we did that exercise because we wanted to demonstrate to the country how ridiculously impossible it is for the average Tobagonian to do business or to get to Trinidad for business or for leisure without a functioning inter-island transportation service. And I think that point was well made, and I think the country now recognizes that as impossible as our task on that day of the swim protest was, so it is now for the average Tobagonian with an inconsistent service and with a service that is more broken than we can fix. But we need to begin to fix the service by, one, facing corruption head-on and dealing with it, because I hold the view as the Prime Minister that a lot of crookish stuff happened in this. Two, we need to ensure that for future reference, whenever we are going for vessels, that the THA has a more meaningful role than sending a rep there, because we have found that when reps go there, and it's just one rep at the moment, reps often see about themselves. And I've heard the disparaging remarks from our current rep about the business community and about Tobagonians who, in his mind, were just whining about the situation and being unreasonable. You know, which was a very unfortunate position for him to take, given that he was meant to represent us all. We also must get to the place whereby whenever this is being done, this process is being done, that the Tobago House of Assembly play an integral role, and that role must include the Executive Council, who for some strange reason decided not to be here, and the Minority Council, so that we won't ever be in this situation again. This must never, ever, ever happen again.
Thank you very much. Ms. Haddad, I trust that I won't be at the end of any cursing at the end of the day, right? I know in your opening you discussed several issues, and I think they would have answered several of the questions that would have come to my mind. I have 3 questions for you, just for clarity. The first of all, was your organization involved in any discussion in the determination of the 2 vessels that were secured, the Cabo Star and the Ocean Flower 2?
I could say something before, Chairman.
Sure.
I could just make a point before.
Please.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Stick with the question. You will have an
Or
opportunity
stick to the
for closing
question.
remarks.
Okay. No, we were not. That is a straight no, we were not.
Okay. The second item, I read the documentation that you submitted on Monday, and what I noticed is that you had 8 letters where you attempted correspondences with several people at the Port Authority, line ministers, and for the record, if I can just read some headings on them. On the 22nd of March 2016 to Fitzgerald Hines, on the 13th of April 2016 to Leon Grant, on the 18th of May 2016 to Mr. Fitzgerald Hines again, the 1st of June 2016 to Christine Sahadeo, on the 1st of July 2016 to Christine Sahadeo, on the 23rd of August 2016 to Melissa Alexis James, on the 7th of October 2016 to Christine Sahadeo, and the 22nd of November 2016 to Leon Grant. And all of them seems to be asking about what is the position with the Galacia. And in your opinion, ma'am, why do you think that none of these letters were responded to? Because I get the sense that there were no response and you had to keep writing back them or other people within the organization for a response. Can you prefer any conversation on that?
Well, that's absolutely correct, and that's why I sent those documents. And I did say in my opening statement that the communication broke down about October 2015. We were no longer engaged, and we were no longer being invited to any meetings. And as I would have put in the document, we enjoyed quarterly meetings with the port where we would actually plan ahead as to peak times and so that we would have an idea of what's happening, because there are many things that affect us. If there's a cruise ship in port the boat cannot dock, and therefore we lose the sailing for that day. So we actually sit with the port, go through the cruise ship schedule, work out then, okay, so if we miss the sailing on the Thursday, will you give us back a sailing on the Saturday? We then have to make arrangement with the business people in Trinidad to open the warehouses or whatever and facilitate us on a Saturday. So there are a lot of logistics that we have to do. So those engagements with the port were very important to us. For the smooth flowing, by our standards, the smooth flowing, it's really not the right and ideal situation, but for the smooth flowing of us surviving in the environment. However, we knew that the Superfast Galicia was on a month-to-month based on our meetings. Now, when the Warrior Spirit came back out of dry docking or fixing, the Warrior Spirit had to continue its journey, and therefore we had two boats sailing at the same time. One departing Trinidad at 2 p.m., one departing at 11 p.m. So the boats crossed. And the port came to us in one of those meetings and said to us that, listen, if the Warrior Spirit, the contract for the Warrior Spirit is up in August, I think it was 2016. The contract is up. The Warrior Spirit we knew was too small at that time. We had outgrown the Warrior Spirit. The Superfast Galicia was taking the cargo, etc. What configurations we needed to make it work for us? Of course, we knew it needed about 300 to 400 passenger accommodation, and which is what we found out was it was possible. The boat had to be configured to accommodate it. But at that stage, the port told us, listen, if it is that the Superfast is working well, we cannot pay for two vessels, okay? So in the interest of the country's purse, would you all agree if we were to release the Warrior Spirit, which had now reached a stage of giving real problems, and the Superfast will be there? That conversation took place, and we as private sector and responsible citizens agreed. Subsequently, so the Warrior Spirit departed August 2016. Now, at that time, we would have had this banding around this month-to-month contract. Nothing was in place. So this is why we were trying to get somebody to tell us something, but we were not being taken on at all. We were totally ignored. And in fact, the letter you would see to Melissa and James is in one of our correspondences to the port board at that time. We were actually told to speak to our Tobago representative, right? So that was the Tobago representative, and you speak to her. So there was no communication there. However, we have a team at the chamber, the male section of it, that does a lot of digging. I don't know, you're always interfering with something. So they're always digging onto the boats and the boat and what boat. And always on the news and sending you stuff. I'm not a techno person, so they will actually advise me of what they found. And on somebody's site, they got... somebody came across, it was Claude Almondos actually, that the panorama was working out in Greece and this was happening. So, they're always researching. And there was this article that came up that the Superfast Galicia was being welcomed back to Spain on the 22nd of May. So, of course, they called Diane after the meeting, and I said, nah, can't be. But it was from the Spanish newspaper. So they sent it to me. I printed it, and at that stage is when we were trying to urgently get now the port board and they to respond to us, because this is now international news and we don't know anything, and this relates to our life. So this is when we now started to tempo up the thing in terms of us understanding what was going on. We then asked for information, and that's why you see we kind of was pushing the minister at the time, Mr. Hines, to tell us what's going on, and we got that letter of comfort, which said that there was an 18-month contract to end in October 2017. So, of course, normal sense prevailing. We said, okay, it means they have a plan. They probably have 18 months, and they will now look for something through the normal process, whatever, that will get 18 months. Whether the Superfast Galicia stays or goes would have been irrelevant once the system was allowed to work. I was at a funeral, and I got a call, and there it was a few of us at the chamber to leave the funeral and go to do a press conference because we got information that this document was not happening. So we were in preventative mode all along. When Minister Sinanan came into office in November, he did, and I must say the only person who actually dealt with us immediately upon arrival in office, he did come to the chamber in Tobago and he met with a number of us and we expressed all our concerns and he committed to us that he was going to fix it. Don't worry, if it is that this is what is the case, then he will deal with it. We felt comforted at that stage in November. However, going into December, we still weren't seeing or hearing anything from the ministry again or the port, and we were left in limbo again. Instead, there were rumors of the board and the port not, the board not operating properly. There was all of that outside there. So we re-engaged again, but of course nobody taking us on. So, we have to find the very popular and necessary media. So we started to tempo it up again. At that stage, we would have come into a stakeholders meeting held because time was drawing close. Of course, if the boat is going to work in Spain from the 22nd of May, we worked backwards. It would have taken X weeks to get to Gibraltar. They would have had to do their work to reflag and so, and all those things. But the boat was, so we calculated backwards that, hey, this boat is going to leave us April month end. So Minister Sinanan came with his team to Tobago again on April the 5th or the 7th. I don't have it. The CD you have. And we met at Mount Irving Bay Hotel. And we went through the entire issue. I made a presentation, and if anybody listens to it, while Mr. Farley Augustine is speaking from his political hat, I spoke from the man on the ground feeling it. And if nobody's emotion moved in, then we are dealing with robots in this country. I gave live instances of all the things that Tobago has endured for the number of years, seeing that at the chamber we have a document dated 1936 under the Royal Salute, and the port and the airport stand out there as two main issues. And during that meeting, Mr. Sinanan and his team, he had introduced the proposed board members to go on board, which would have been Mr. Tommy Elias and Mr. Adrian Bihari. They were there present, but they were not in their capacity. And whilst at that meeting, there were many things that were said. Every stakeholder that was in that room, it was one of the most complete meetings in terms of representation, gave and was given the time to speak, hence 3.5 hours of a meeting. But it was very well in depth explained to the minister and his team and what were the needs of Tobago and Tobagonians and what it would have costed us. There were certain things that came out. Comments like, sometimes you have to break an egg to make an omelette. And I want to say that you can only break an egg if you're going to make an omelette, because I don't know how else you'll make it. There were things like we were being held to ransom and that nobody's going to put a gun to anybody's head, and this government is going to ensure that the procurement process is right, and that they... So these statements that I would have witnessed, because I painfully sat in the parliament for the last 2 days, these statements that I heard coming out and people denying was really depressing for me. Because these things were said, these things are real. And at that meeting, we were very clear to explain to the minister and his team that we could not afford to allow that vessel at the time to leave these shores. Why? In a nutshell, the two fast ferries, or slow fast ferries, were not working to capacity. Every time we attempted to put heavy cargo on it, they will break down. They couldn't take the licks. And therefore, we needed to patacake those while we did a transition of, getting the other vessels. We participated in 2013 or 14, I think it was, 13, on a technical committee at the port where we actually identified what were the needs of Trinidad and Tobago, more so Tobago in terms of the ferry service, to facilitate the movement of people by the fast ferries, the conventional cargo, which a conventional cargo takes a number of passengers and cargo, and the cargo ferry, which will be just a cargo ferry. We went into all the details and explanations why. This had to do with the fact that there's a dry docking schedule, and if you have all of those dry docking schedules and so, then...
Excuse me, Ms. Haddad, the members indicated that his question has been answered.
Mr.
Is there any other?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And let me welcome Mrs. Diane Haddad and Mr. Farley Augustine, Assemblyman Farley Augustine. Well, I just want to put on the record my utter disappointment based on what the chairman read very early via correspondence. The failure of the Chief Secretary to grace us with his presence so we could have heard from the Chief Secretary of the Tobago House of Assembly on this whole matter of the vessels and the crisis. I also want to indicate to the chairman, based on what the truckers indicated to us, it might be useful, Mr. Chairman, for us as a committee to visit, to pay a site visit on the Cabo Star. So we will get a first-hand appreciation of what the truckers and passengers are experiencing with the Cabo Star. I put this out for your consideration. I would like to also ask now, there's a letter I have in my possession which you sent and which I had before, May the 31st, 2016, addressed to Mr. Demi John Cruikshank, given the Chamber of Commerce, Industry and Commerce, the Tobago Division, the clear assurance from the Ministry of Works and Transport on behalf of the Minister of Works and Transport, with the approval of the board and management, that there will be an agreement for 18 months involving the Superfast Galicia. That was an undertaking given. You are now telling us that you got an assurance in November of 2016 from Minister Sinanan that everything, like Bob Marley would say, will be okay and all right. And then you had a meeting in April of this year where, again, you had some concerns and Minister Sinanan said a number of things. What I want to ask you, Mrs. Haddad, what went wrong? Why, having given an undertaking to you and the chamber in writing, and I know people's word, if it have any value, ought to constitute their bond. And when you write something, you must mean what you say. Why would they give you an undertaking, the government of Trinidad and Tobago, on the 31st of May, that they will sign this 18-month extension? And you have to come back in November to beg something that was supposed to be done since in May, given the letter that I have before me. And then this climax in April at a meeting at the Mount Irving Hotel. Could you tell us what went wrong? Was this a manufactured crisis in an effort to bring in the Cabo Star and the Ocean Flower? What is your professional opinion as a citizen of the Republic, as a representative of the Chamber, as a person with a lot of experience in this particular sea bridge situation? could you tell me what is your opinion and how would you guide us on this matter?
I would want to say that I would like to be on that side of the table to question a number of people. But what a tangled web we weave when at first we set out to deceive. And that is what I would want to say, because I know, Mr. Chair, you stopped me just now, but I was actually getting to the point that I would have answered Mr. Mark's question as well.
I prefer you to answer them
The
after
question,
they're asked.
all right. At the meeting at Mount Irving, when we brought it forward, there were vessels that we were hearing jumping up all in space, a number of names. The Puglia, the Elizabeth Ross, a number of vessels, the Atlantic Provider, and so I have the documents here. And that there were suddenly now a new set of people invited to tender, 11 or 12 names. And we asked the minister about it, I did, about those things in terms of how come this whole thing has just changed and why is it causing us this disruption. I asked him particularly about the Atlantic Provider, and he said to me, I don't know anything about that. I never heard that before. Subsequently, we received the Atlantic Provider within days of the departure of the Superfast Galicia. The Elizabeth Ross, we knew, was one of the offerings with similar capacity to the Superfast Galicia, and it would have been here in about a week and a half to 2 weeks. That's what we found out. And those things were shut down, they were denied. We would have had the same challenge we have now, which is it's a cargo vessel, it could only hold 12 persons, but under the created crisis, I guess it would have served us better. However, we had to take what was dished out to us. So, sir, I would really like to be sitting on your side of the table.
May I ask, we just had the Truckers Association, and its president, Mr. Harris, I think it's Ahmed, indicated, we didn't provide any evidence, and Mr. Franklin Khan had to correct him that we got testimony from the Port Authority, contrary to what was told to us by Mr. Ahmed. I wanted to ask you whether you are aware, as he seemed to have been aware, but he probably didn't have the proof of it, that there were several tenders that were issued for the by the port to obtain the vessel for this sea bridge. And on many occasions, according to the testimony, the Elizabeth Ross and some other one came first. I am not aware of that, but a statement has been made, evidence have been proffered, and I wanted to ask you again as the chairperson of the Chamber Inter-Island Transportation Committee, whether you have any knowledge of any tendering processes that may have been conducted on a few occasions, and on every occasion, the international IC, intercontinental shipping, won, and every tender was canceled in an effort, from what I drew, from what he said, to make way for the preferred, let's say, contractor or the preferred winner at the end of the day. You could share or shed any light on that?
That tendering process you speak about is where the Superfast Galicia, as far as we knew, would have won the tender. There were 4 tenders put out, and this is before the boat, let's say the owners, I want to say, decided to depart. There were 4 tenders put out different times. Each one was cancelled for whatever reason. But our understanding, Mr. Hamid is correct, was that the Superfast came out super fast ahead of everybody else. The Elizabeth Ross of which you speak is that our understanding was that in the crisis situation, because a lot of boats were being thrown into the ring, right? Even we were getting boats at the chamber. I don't know why they thought there. But people were sending stuff to us nonstop. And the our understanding is that there was available the Elizabeth Ross that came out first, the Puglia that came out second, and the Atlantic provider that came out third. For what reasons, we don't know, but we were given the Atlantic provider. I think I heard that in Parliament as well while I was there, something about the Atlantic provider and it's why it was chosen.
My final question to you, Mr. Chairman, through you. Oh, no final question? Okay.
Good afternoon again. The question that I have, because at the end of this, we need to get to an ideal. And in any business, one of the ways that you grow the business is you get feedback from your end user, and then you implement that into what you're providing. And to me, as I've been listening over the last 3 days, it seems over and over again, I don't know for how long, a number of years, that we're trying to fit a size 12 foot into a size 10 shoe. Because the technology by way of the boats have long gone past what our infrastructure here in Trinidad and Tobago, and we have no choice because the boats have to be replaced after a particular point in time. And then when they come, we try all kind of reactive ways to sort of get it to fit for what we need it for. So my question really is, in your opinion, what is the ideal situation in relation to the cargo and the ferries? What would make it run in a way that would be efficient for Tobago? And I guess that would mean operations and maintenance, even procurement.
Mr. De Freitas, I'm under parliamentary privilege, sir.
That's correct. Take a seat.
Mr. De Freitas, this country needs to get serious about what this country needs to do to serve the people of this country. I sat, as I said, painfully and listened to public servants shamelessly give evidence for the last 2 days. I sat and listened to politicians who actually were a disgrace to what leadership should be. And I sat there and punished, crying in my heart for Trinidad and Tobago. There is no need for us to be here today, sir. And to run those ports is very simple. We need to be honest, we need to do what is in the best interests of the people, and we need to leave our personal gains and wishes and mischief out of it. We would be willing to participate with any leadership that has those qualities. I stumped the politician.
That's right. No.
You refer to politicians, so you must
Yeah.
expect a response.
Sir, I am so sorry to tell you, you put me with a politician. You really rain on my parade.
That's fine. That's fine. No, I concur with all Ms. Haddad just said. And until, as a country, we begin to seriously put punitive measures in place against those who incur this kind of damage to the public and to the public purse, then we are not going anywhere. We could go after the Sonia type boat next. We could end up with the same situation. We could change the configuration of the Port Authority. We can end up with the same problem. And so this committee and the Parliament has an opportunity now in a very punitive way to deal with those who would have created this crisis. And I'm answering an initial question as I answer this one. This crisis, in my mind, very clear about that this crisis was created. It did not happen by accident. It's not an emergency. It was created. On May 28th last year, the former minister stood in the Parliament, that's Mr. Fitzgerald Hines, and he indicated that, we will get new ferries and they will be above and beyond normal specifications, and he boasted about that in the Parliament. More than a year later, we find ourselves in a monkey pants that we are stumbling to get out of. A year from that, we found ourselves in a situation where we had no boat. We had nothing to go by. And it says to me, one, that governance is not working. And I could speak like this perhaps because I am new to this business of politics, and I'm still very ideological in my outlook of things, but governance is not working, because if we knew contracts were going to be ended, if we knew that we needed new boats because what we had were old, then we should have known to put things in place long before the system collapsed. So it cannot
Thank you.
be
Intruding
a
on the
crisis.
members'
Sure.
time to ask questions.
Sure.
Have no more questions? Any other member? Okay, I would now invite you all. You have 2 minutes to make closing comments.
Sure, no problem. I'm a gentleman, so I'll oblige. This issue has really hit Tobago at the worst possible time. It has happened at a time when our tourism was almost dead. It has happened at a time when the national economy is at its worst in the last 2 decades. It has happened at a time when global economies are not doing as well, and where in the Caribbean region growth is low and slow. And it is happening at a time whereby we thought we would have gotten better from governance. In fact, we were fooled into thinking we will get better from governance. And so Tobago has suffered through this more than anyone else. And I want to implore everyone on the other side of the waters that's watching, because there's a tendency to think that this is a Tobago issue only. But this is a national issue, because Tobago issues are national issues. And since the arrangements that we have had in the past would have failed, since the arrangements whereby we have this port authority with a one Tobago rep that does whatsoever he or she wants, sometimes we don't even know who the rep from Tobago is, since that type of arrangement has consistently failed us, we are saying, let us put some of the responsibilities squarely on the shoulders of Tobagonians, starting with elected officials like myself. Let the THA take some of the responsibility. And I'll be uncharacteristically short and end this by saying, Tobago cannot lay claims to greater autonomy without first laying claim to greater responsibility. And so if we want to lay claims to greater autonomy, we must first lay claim to greater responsibility. And we too on this island must take some responsibility for what has happened. Those that we elected to lead us, our executive council, has failed us on this matter. They have not spoken to the issue. They have shied away from it, duck away from the issue all along. And it is time that as a nation, we move ahead and out of this created crisis. But to do so, we have to get serious, attach some punitive measures to those who are the culprits, ensure we get rid of them, and let us have a functioning inter-island transportation service.
Thank you.
Sir, so my first request would be, I would not like to sit with a politician next time. Thank you. But having said that, you see, he takes the time. There were a couple things I observed from the committee which I would like to share. Mr. Khan, I'm disappointed you didn't ask me any questions, neither you, Ms. Jennings. Reason being, I sat and watched you all question a number of people for the last couple of days, and I found the order of the committee to not come across as clean as it should in terms of bringing forward the right mood. So we had a party line still. So I must declare that I'm disappointed that I was not asked questions by you, Mr. Khan, and Ms. Jennings. However, sir, I would like to know from you and the team whether there's any opportunity, because I don't know where this will build and go, what it would be the end result of this, whether there's any opportunity for us, the stakeholders who literally held the stake, the end of it that give us the big cut, whether there'll be any opportunity for us to question the people who would have made commitments to us and have us here today because they have deceived us by our standards and estimation.
Afraid that is not how these inquiries proceed.
All right, thank you, sir.
We
However,
do the questioning.
all right, I would like to thank the committee. I would like to say that it's been quite
You interrupted me. I'm saying that you can submit, because I have been soliciting at every session questions from our listenership and our viewership. So you can submit questions.
What is the format, so in terms of how are those questions usually posed them through the other people?
Yeah, email,
No,
Twitter.
no. Do you give the other persons to ask them, or you ask those
Yeah,
questions?
we read out the questions here.
You ask them?
Yeah.
And why I'm saying that is I know a number of questions that came in that I have not heard asked. I spent the last 2 days
Right.
with you, you know.
We have time constraints where that is
Right.
concerned. But remember, because we have people present, and we have to at least, there's no point bringing you here and allowing other people to ask questions while you are here, and we need to interact with you. So that is a constraint. However, we are aware of the issues raised. Sometimes the questions are meant for people who are not here. So that poses a problem as well. Good. The other thing about it is the inquiry doesn't close today. We will be back in Tobago Wednesday the 20th. So, you know, there's time for many more questions to be asked. And if you wish to revise your submission, you could write and request that. So there's an opportunity for information process.
I would like to urge the members to listen to the CD, and then they would probably have a lot more questions to ask. And if they do, I am also happy and willing to come back on the 20th to serve the people of Tobago, and by extension, those of Trinidad and Tobago, by hopefully standing for what is in the best interests of the people. Thank you, sir.
I thank you for your service thus far. Good. We will not suspend for 3 minutes. We will ask the next group, which is? Yes, sir. Could you introduce the two new members of your team?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. Thank you for seeing us again. The members of the team, this is Caroline Birchwood-James. She is the Vice President of the Tobago Hotel and Tourism Association. Ms. Shirley Cook on the end is the Secretary, and Kate Rotman you met this morning. Ms. Caroline Birchwood-James will do the opening statement.
Okay, so I would allow you to make a brief opening statement.
Good afternoon, everybody. The Tobago Hotel and Tourism Association appreciates the opportunity to participate in this important dialogue as we seek to examine and determine the challenges and the current state of the ferry service between Trinidad and Tobago, as well as its impact on our tourism stakeholders. Our organization represents 1,200 rooms, and the sea bridge is critical to the survival of this industry. It has become even more critical when we consider the current shortfall in international arrivals. In the past 5 months, families were abandoned on the ports, that's either the Tobago port, the Trinidad port, with no water, food, or communication, while boats were either delayed or canceled overnight due to mechanical problems. Many visitors to Tobago had to return to their hosts, who either accommodated them free of charge or at minimal cost. We are talking about at 9 o'clock in the night, they now announce the boat cannot travel, it has broken down, and there are families and so on. They don't have any more money or anything like that. And for many of them, they came back to their hotels, their guest houses, their bed and breakfast. And of course, there were customers, we couldn't send them away, we had to accommodate. Standby on the port and airport is now the norm. We now ask our guests to book the inter-island transport before booking accommodation. The airlift on the domestic route is inadequate, but you cannot rectify the air bridge without first fixing the sea bridge. Problems on the sea bridge put pressure on the air bridge. The announcement of the cancellation of the Ocean Flower 2 sent shockwaves throughout the industry with massive cancellations all around. The July-August holidays, which the accommodation sector depends on to last through the slow season of September through to November, was a total disaster. We see this present situation on the sea bridge as catastrophic for the tourism industry, which at this time is experiencing tourists clamoring for refunds, and we have the inability to pay banks, staff, and utilities. For many of our members, it's all three. For some, it's staff and utilities, and those are the lucky ones. In light of the foregoing, this association, as part of the private sector, has been mandated by its members to make the following representations to the Joint Select Committee, which are, these are our recommendations. We're saying it up front. That the association have a presence on the Caribbean Airlines as well as the Port Authority boards, respectively. That the sector have an input in the procurement for a new passenger vessel. 3, that the government consider the need for compensation for losses as a direct result of the breakdown of the sea bridge. And 4, that the government intervene to provide immediate relief to a sector via a moratorium on the hotel tax or taxes in general through the government of the central bank, a stay on the closure of tourism plants by commercial banks. We thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing us this opening statement, and we await your questions.
Thank you very much, Ma'am, and welcome. I have 2 quick questions. I will give both of them, and then at your own pace, you can answer. Senator Mark, in an earlier request, asked the Truckers Association about the cost that they have had to incur based on this crisis. Ms. Haddad, before you, also spoke about cost that they have had to incur in terms of rescheduling and cost to her employees and employees of all her members and so on. And the first question is, in your opinion, being the leaders in the industry here in Tobago, what has been the economic cost of this crisis that has befallen this nation? And 2, do you think or do you agree with the minister's assumption that the cost to maintain or to keep the Galicia here was too much for the people of Tobago and Trinidad to bear, knowing what we know now? Thank you.
Mr. Chris James is going to answer that the first question.
Okay, the cost is difficult for us to work out total. When I was asked the question first, and I have given a figure of 25 million, that 25 million was just for a 4-month period of when we actually had cancellations, but also, as Caroline had said, when people book now, what we've had to get used to is when they phone up about your accommodation, we have to check first they either have a flight or a ferry ticket, because it was becoming too expensive for all the refunds that we had to do through the credit card system. Once they come back and say they can't get this ferry or they can't get the flight, we count that as a loss. What we cannot estimate is the loss in confidence, which we believe is even greater, because that figure was just accommodation. It does not include car hire, restaurants, and all of that. We don't have the ability as an association to work out all of those costs. So you're talking many, many millions of dollars if you add all those costs. But I think the biggest cost is the loss, and as I spoke of this morning, the loss of that confidence that Trinidadians will even attempt to come here. We know that the higher spending Trinidadians have stopped coming here because we've seen in the more expensive restaurants, because we've had endless restaurants, hotels closed down, that they have not got that high spending. What I did in looking at those costs, I found 4 of the associations, islands close to us, and all of them, as I again said this morning, all of them had seen an increase in Trinidad visitors, but high spending Trinidad visitors had gone elsewhere. And that is our challenge. We've used the calculations before. When you talk about the cost of the ferry or the air bridge, I know the Minister of Finance says that there's a subsidy of $30 million on the air bridge. I'd love to look at those, have help to dissect those figures, because if we are saving the country foreign exchange leakage by having Trinidadians come here, is it a loss? Maybe we're actually gaining from those people coming in. Well, I've already told you this morning that we have 70 cents of every dollar staying in the economy. If we calculate the benefit, the cost benefit of those jobs created in Trinidad, the jobs created in Tobago, and whatever, if it's $30 million to bring the people, maybe we get more than that back. Back in 2005, we were exporting foreign exchange with our international visitors. We've never done an assessment of the value of the domestic tourism to the economy of Trinidad and Tobago, to my knowledge. We do not have a true figure. And the final thing I want to say on that, the data that is missing, we quite often get figures given to us that there were last year we got told there were 1.1 million journeys to Tobago. We found it hard to believe with 1.4 million people living in the country. But that's what we were told. When you actually analyze those figures, Caribbean Airlines cannot tell me how many same-day returns they have. They have no idea how many people come on a same-day return. They cannot tell me where the tickets originate, whether they originate from Trinidad or Tobago. Same on the ferry. Until we can actually identify these figures and calculate the length of stay of the average Trinidadian, all of those things, we cannot do the maths on this. It's impossible. We know from our own figures, our businesses are suffering.
It's a huge economic cost.
Huge economic loss.
Ms. Trotman, you want to say something? Ms. Trotman is the president of this, let's put it generally, the small hoteliers that will be bed and breakfast and so on.
While we have not put an actual dollar figure on the losses, what I can say is that our membership have been experiencing a decrease in their occupancy level and a considerable increase in cancellation. Our small properties range from 5 to 15 rooms, and at this present time, our occupancy levels are below 20%, and I'm being generous there. And for a property that is 5 or 15 rooms, you're talking about only having 1 to 3 rooms occupied per month. That is a significant blow. There's no way you can survive on that. And that has nothing to do with marketing or customer service. It has everything to do with the fact that people just cannot get to you. Those are other issues to deal with, our marketing and customer service, but just from the ferry, consistency of the ferry service, or CAL, the air bridge, because people cannot get to you, it makes programs like the Stay to Getaway staycation that was launched by the Ministry of Tourism for the August vacation, null and void, because while people would call and ask you if you have room, they can't get to us.
Ms. Cook wants to say something, and she represents the restaurant and all the other areas, marina and so on, just general.
Good evening. I need to respond to that because I believe the minister in may not have a full grasp of the economic impact that this seabridge crisis, and I may say this is a man-made crisis, because if you look at Crown Point, Bonaccord and Canaan, which I fondly call the carbon crown of Tobago, is a place where private sector has seriously invested in Tobago, as opposed to the THA carrying the brunt of the economic driver here in Tobago. And if you look at that area, with the level of investment and the loss that we have incurred over the last 4 months with the loss of the Galicia, we're looking at a minimum of $20 million, and that is to be conservative. So you see, because this service have not been recognized as an essential service, it is, I believe, it is the reason why we've led to this position, and of course with the other elements of the fraud and corruption that may have taken place. But the issue is that because this inter-island transportation service is not recognized as an essential service, this is why the minister in his capacity and may not understand the full impact of this situation on the economy of Tobago could look at that cost of $2 million as a big burden for the nation. But when you tabulate our costs, and this is not something that is just happening, Tobago has been suffering tremendously economically. Our development must be viewed as national development. And I'm hoping that the costs the minister talk about need to be viewed in the context of the tremendous cost to the people of Tobago.
If I might add something to what Ms. Cook says, we have to look at the inter-island transport system, both the ferry and the air bridge, as more than just essential services. It's essential service plus, because it would be critical to the development of an economy, not just to get people back and forward as if it's a bus service, but if we have to develop the economy, the agriculture sector, the agro-processing sector, where you are looking at reliable means of getting your end product or even some of your inputs in and out of the island, your sea bridge and your air transport have to be more than just essential services. So while there is a part to play with it being essential services of moving people back and forth, given the institutional arrangement between Trinidad and Tobago in terms of how some of the administrative things are done, if we're looking at the platform of seriously developing an economy, a transport system in a twin island state is an absolute critical vehicle. For the port must not just operate as a port for Trinidad and Tobago, it must operate as an international port facility that brings in income. And that could be a major economic driver for even a small economy like Tobago. You add an added diversified element.
To get some clarity, you are asserting then that what was before us was the dawn of a national Tobago emergency.
Of course it is. Not just a Tobago emergency, it's a Tobago emergency, yes.
Tobago economy is separate from what goes on in Trinidad, the
yes.
Trinidad economy. And
therefore, because we are twin island state, it is a national emergency because it has an impact on Trinidad.
But I'm just trying to get it clear that it's proportions in terms because Trinidad would survive.
Yes.
But what you are saying to us is that the Tobago economy
will not.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just have 3 questions, Mr. Chairman. Mrs. Shirley Cook, you said a short while ago that there appeared to have been fraud and corruption. And I get the impression you're talking about the transaction involving recent developments. I don't know if you were referring to the purchase of the Carbo Star and the Ocean Flower, or on the wider issue of the Sea Bridge and the vessels like the Atlantic provider, the Trinity Transporter. But I would like, for my own edification and clarification, if you can elaborate. That's the first question to you. The second one is to Mr. James. Could you tell us, Mr. James, how many hotels that you are aware of as the president and restaurants, small family type hotel and restaurants, have collapsed since the sea bridge crisis? How many workers have been thrown on the breadline as a result of that development? And I would also like to ask maybe Mrs. Trotman or my good friend who spoke earlier, how many hotels and restaurants are under direct threat of imminent closure if the relief that you have identified in your list of recommendations are not met by the government within the shortest possible time frame, given the experiences you have had and how you're seeing things unfolded if not addressed quickly. So these are the areas I'd like to have clarified.
Am I on? Yeah.
Ms. Cook is going to answer first.
Yes. Now, there's a reason why we're here. We're here because as a committee, you want to get to the bottom of the procurement process. And it is clear that something went wrong. Our Prime Minister indicated at the stakeholders meeting that there's some crooked something that went on. And it's therefore based on those backdrops, all the information that is in the media, that it is clear that some malfeasance, something went on that speaks to fraud and corruption. Until we get to the bottom of it, we cannot clearly confirm that. And what I'm trying to say, though, is that it is about time that if we have to use this situation as a model for proper governance of our Twin Island Republic, this would be the occasion. And I'm hoping that we get to the bottom of this because Tobago is at the worst end of this man-made crisis. Was there another question?
Chris is going to talk about the hotels and restaurants. We're prepared for it. We have a list here.
Okay, I'm not going to give names, but two things I want to say. First of all, this goes back, this was just the final straw. The fast ferry problems, the sea bridge, the cargo ship problems and the air bridge problems were the final straw for a lot of properties. Let me just give you a very, very brief overview. In February 2007, the Tobago House of Assembly asked for an order to be instructed that a land license regime gets put into Tobago. Okay? That land license regime took until October 2010. We've had no foreign investment because of that land license regime. To put that in context, the first land license took 42 months to issue. We lost 12 large investments into this destination because of that land license regime and because of the length of time it took to implement. It's actually supposed to take 20 days. On average, the licenses are taking over a year to receive. So that has to be the context, because at the same time that happened was the decline in our international arrivals. Things like Tobago plantations with the villa sector helped us secure the airlift to the destination. A lot of the front of the ends of the planes were taken up by people that own villas here. So we had that security for the airlines that we were filling seats. That is decreased because a lot of those people sold. They could not keep their properties because of the land license situation, so they just got rid of them. A lot of Trinidadians did not invest because one of the things that a lot of these projects were Trinidadian projects. They were building to sell to foreigners, to rent out for holidays and things. Tourism has a wide range of needs. Villa sector, bed and breakfast, 3-star, 4-star, 5-star, all of those things have to be included in the tourism sector to fill an aircraft. And that's where we lost. So when we got down to 19,000 arrivals last year, as I said, we turned our attention over the last few years to domestic tourism. That domestic tourism has been up to 80% of our business. When you look at the figures that TAJ gives, Ms. Trotman was saying about the 20%. We've been averaging in Tobago about 34%, 32% occupancy in the larger hotels. The properties that K represent 20 to 22%. The regional average is 68%. Our average rate is 154 for hotels. I think it's 56 for smaller guest houses. The average in the region is 270. So we're way down on occupancy and rate. So and this is one of the reasons we have a problem, and the reason these properties are in trouble, because there is about 18 properties that are in trouble. 18 properties that are in trouble. They're not, we're hoping we can hold them off. There is a meeting with the Bankers Association coming up on the 20th. But the problem's not now. The problem is that we didn't earn the money in July and August. The problem's going to be next month and the month after and the month after. To answer your question on staffing, we haven't people have tried to keep the staff. What they've done is reduce the days. We have 3-day weeks. That's what we've had to do. What we've had to do with utility companies is ask for payment plans. So we cannot pay, it's quite easy, when you don't have the money coming in, you cannot pay your taxes and your utility bills and your staff. Something has to give when you've only got this small amount of money. Another figure, at $154, we would have to average around 50%, 52% to break even. That's the kind of occupancy we need to break even at that rate. That would pay our staff, pay the bills, and the things that we have to do. You're not making money, you're standing still. This was the final blow. This July and August has become so important to this industry that the loss of that July and August is now, in the next 3 months, going to put us in real jeopardy. A lot of properties, restaurants, in real jeopardy.
Senator Mark, and to answer your last question, I would say most of our hotels and guest houses and related business are under serious distress. Because of the position that Chris and I hold, we are privy, owners come to us. We have owners who can't pay their light bills. We try to get up to T and Tech to talk so that they can have some plan. Those who can't pay their telephone, and you know internet is everything, must have that in your hotel, we try to go to talk to them. We have had over the years, and even in recent times, trying to talk to some of our bankers. Our treasurer is a qualified accountant auditor. We try to talk to them. So it is a serious situation. And remember, we also own properties, and we are also under serious distress. There is a 35-room hotel, well-known hotel, and this is what the owner said to me 3 weeks ago. It cost him $400,000, because they do food, they do everything, $400,000 a month for his operations. In July, he earned $150,000. This conversation was at the end of July, the early August. He had trouble paying his staff because he was in a shortfall of $250,000. And that is the message that has gone wrong to all. Now we have earned no money for July and August. We are now in September. And we have a member of the board came to us and said, look, I do not know how I'm paying my salaries for August. That was our last board meeting, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. Yes. And much less, and all the other owners say, we do not know how we are paying our salaries. We're not even talking about bank and light bill yet. Salaries for September. We haven't reached October. We haven't reached November yet. So our hoteliers are in serious distress. And not the old hoteliers alone, because Ms. Cook will tell you, the restaurants and so on. You stand up at the Crown Point area. That's the busiest area in Tobago. You stand up there in morning where you're accustomed seeing tourists of all colors and shapes and so on, up and down. There's nobody. You go in the banks in that area, nobody. We accustomed tourists coming in, changing US dollars and all that. No, nobody. Even in the evening time, there's hardly anybody. The police don't bother to come out to tell people don't park there because there's nobody. The island with the tourism industry is in serious, very serious distress. And remember, these are the properties that we are in control of, so we have a fair idea. There are other villas. We know villa owners, 3-4 months, they haven't got anybody in the villa. How do you pay the bank? How do you pay the workers? How do you pay the housekeeper? The toilets need to fix and whatever it is, security and all of that. So this is a very serious situation as far as our tourism is concerned. And remember, we are doing this in the backdrop of a heavy decline in our international visitors. So we are now highly dependent on our local tourism industry.
Good afternoon and welcome. Listening to your issues, I'm looking back at the topic that we are here to listen to issues on, which is an inquiry into Trinidad and Tobago inter-island ferry service, with specific focus on the procurement and maintenance of the ferries, with specific reference to Tobago. And yes, I am aware of the failing tourism trust in Tobago and the limited amount of tourists coming to Tobago. I'm also aware that you have been looking at Trinidad as your main persons to attract to Tobago. But could you tell us or give us an indication to provide some evidence as to how many, each hotel, how many bookings were cancelled? Because this crisis would have started sometime in April. Am I wrong or right?
Yes,
Right. So could we provide some kind of analysis of what has been happening prior and after April, because we know too that there was a time when you were complaining about the air bridge, right? So if we want to delve into the issues at hand now, looking at the ferry, we need to look at the kind of cancellation we've had. I know the hotels would have had bookings from persons coming to Trinidad. What you may not have had is how they expected to come to Tobago, whether they expected to come by air or sea. But I think if you could get something that could guide us, the committee here, we'll have a better understanding of the impact it has had on Tobago and Tobago's tourism industry.
Thank you, Senator, for
supply us.
thank you, Senator, for asking that question, and we are prepared for it because that's how we were able to calculate our 25 million more or less. So Mr. Chris James is the one who did the calculation, so he will tell you, he'll give you an idea of how much cancellations we have had. And remember, that is under our purview.
Yeah, what we do, we do our own calculations from our membership's responses on occupancy, but we also get the Tobago House of Assembly figures where they do their own data collection. They're usually pretty close. Last July and August, we averaged slightly over 50%, 51, 52% for July and August. It looks very much like this July and August is going to be as low as 24%. In actual room numbers, it's difficult because the length of stays are so variant. So I can't tell you, we calculate our occupancy in room nights. So it's not individuals, it's room nights. What we have learned is that people have reduced their length of stay because they've gone back when they can actually get a flight or get a ferry ticket. And all of that is not, we're not able to calculate that in true terms. But I can tell you that the occupancy has dropped over 20% during that July and August period. Over 20%. And that's just for our membership. So to actually calculate the value of that is, again, difficult because of the hotels, restaurants, and all of that. There's a thing. But there's a distinct drop. And as I say, it's an increasing drop because people's confidence is lost. And what I didn't mention before, and I should mention, one of the challenges we've got, you see, with the banks, Mr. Mark, you asked about the closures. Along with the land license came a devalue of properties in Tobago, about 30% devaluation of properties. A lot of the properties, a lot of the hotel properties, guest houses, bed and breakfast, had borrowed with 70% equity. When the properties dropped, there was no equity left in the property. So they were borrowed to the maximum amount that they could borrow. Therefore, with this declining situation, they cannot go to the banks to get more money because their properties have been devalued. So that gives you an idea of where we are in terms of property closures.
Okay, go ahead.
Ms. Trotman, you want to say something?
Yes, if I'm to add to what Chris has said, she asked specifically about what percentage might have been as a result of the sea bridge. From general knowledge, though we do not have the calculation, most of the visitors that come, Trinidad visitors that come during the July-August period, because it's families, come with their vehicles. So that, at least for that period, July-August, most of your cancellation would have been people traveling with the ferry because those are families, and most of them usually come across with their vehicles.
So that we are looking at the ferry system. What has been the experiences with the water taxi that assists on the transportation between the two islands?
Okay, no, again, from what Ms. Trotman just said, it hasn't helped in the terms of most of those family visitors want to come with a vehicle. If they come with a vehicle, they can't go on the water ferry. What it hasn't done, it hasn't made it, one of the things we haven't highlighted is even though we've complained about the air bridge, the air bridge can never make up for the shortfall on the ferry. If the ferry doesn't bring 500 or 600 people, that's 6 or 7 aircraft additional a day. So we just wanted to make that point. There's no way, we are very pleased with the amount of work Caribbean Airlines has done. We still believe that they need to focus more on tourism, but there's no way that air bridge could have made up for the shortfall on the fast ferry. So the losses were considerable because they could never have been made up on that Caribbean Airlines.
Madam Senator, I just want to answer specific to your question. People do not have confidence. Besides, you can't carry your car on that water taxi. People do not have confidence with that water taxi in those open seas. That is the real answer for that question. In the open seas there, that ferry, the ride is not comfortable and people do not have confidence in it. So you'll find that the ferry will come up, only 10 people go on it, when they could hold, what, about 200 and so on.
Okay, I'll make a short interjection here. I know I'm a very wanted person to speak, so I will so do. This morning, when we were dealing with the agricultural sector, I said something and I want to repeat it, that I feel the pain of the Tobago society on this matter. I genuinely do, trust me. And what this ferry fiasco or the ferry issue has clearly demonstrated, in my view, in a more general sense, I want to make some general statements, is how precariously positioned the Tobago economy is. You're not on solid ground. Whether it's in agriculture, whether it is in tourism, whether it's in commerce, whether it is in industry, whether it is whatever. The Tobago economy as an economy is very, very precariously placed. I think this is an opportunity if we can take a bad and turn it into a good. So you can now analyze with a greater level of clarity what your challenges are. Because tourism was diving even before March, you know.
Yeah.
Significantly so compared to the other islands. And then you hopefully were saying, well, we'll pick up the slack with domestic tourism because there were Trinidadians who like to come here because from a cost structure point of view, it is the best destination for Trinidadians. Yeah. There's no way in the Caribbean, and I travel the Caribbean, you could get a beach like Pigeon Point or Story and come here with a couple $1,000 a weekend TT and have a good holiday, including top restaurants. So that is one issue. Now, I want to go on record as saying that in any modern economy, transportation and connectivity is critical. If you don't have that, you're in this race at all. Yeah. Okay? It happened with the subway, whether it's the subway in New York or the subway in London, whether it's the great interstate highways of the United States. Connectivity is what drives progress. And if Trinidad and Tobago is a unitary state, you are totally right. It is even more than an essential service. It is our umbilical cord that connects the both of us together. Because if that isn't there, the mother nor the child will survive. So, and that is the issue that I want us to address eventually at the end of this inquiry, because there are transportation systems all over the world. The most efficient probably is in Italy, with the Italian ferries to all these offshore islands in southern Italy. The Greek ferry system, which is the Greek chain, and I mean the Greek are the ship magnates of the world. So there are models as to how to do it when to do it, why to do it, and how to get it efficient. Okay? I'm not here in my capacity as a minister, I'm here as a senator, so I have to be careful what I say and how I say it. But I just want to just step out of my crease a little bit and say, it is something that the government understands and understands fundamentally. A lot of things have gone wrong, and I would be the first to admit it has gone wrong. But I make no apologies for saying that we are going to fix it, okay? And we have to understand clearly the service that we are going to provide. Because I think we must have a reliable cargo and passenger ferry system. You are right. The car load is only a small percentage of even the passenger load from Trinidad to Tobago. And then again, you have to look at the whole subsidy system. Because as much as I speak about the Greek ferries and the Italian ferry, I know of no country in the world that subsidizes both sea transport and air transport. In most countries in the world, they subsidize sea transport. Very few, if any, subsidize air. Because air, in other words, you can afford to buy a ticket to travel by air, and then the subsidy, it goes for the people who cannot afford that, and they come with the ferry system. So the challenge of the Galicia, the Cabo Star, the Ocean Flower is a part of the history of Trinidad and Tobago that none of us like. I personally don't, and I'm sure most Tobagonians don't like what transpired. It happened, and we have to learn from it, okay? The crux of the matter is proper procurement, proper specifications, and a transparent tendering process. But these issues has to be expert-driven. Too many times in this country, decisions are taken by people who are not expert-driven. Okay, and what we have to do is more consultation, and you are right, because stakeholder participation is the modern way of government. No government could survive in a modern world without serious consultation and stakeholder participation. So these are some of the things I wanted to lay on the table. It's not specific to how much cancellations were there and how much cancellation were not there. Because come 6 months from today, we will source a new passenger ferry, a fast ferry. Good. We may be making it in 2.5 to 3 hours. And in 9 months' time, we may have a new replacement for the Cabo Star. And in 9 to 12 months from today, your transportation issues may be something of the past, but the fundamental structural issues of the Tobago economy will remain. Okay? So while I don't want to turn the ball onto that in specific because of this inquiry, I just want to say that the challenge we face with the transportation system in the short term, as bad as we think it is only temporary. And then let's deal collectively as a central government, as a parliament, as a THA, as a Tobago stakeholder group to really put this Tobago economy on an even footing. That's my contribution.
Member, if I may, sorry, Mrs. James, if I may follow on your example where you have gone. That is why the solution, even though we are focusing on the sea bridge for short-term solution, we cannot limit the scope of our analysis to just short-term. We have to look at the medium term and the long term because, yes, we might solve the short-term issues in the next couple of months, 6 months, we hope before that. But it may not change the fundamental problems that are there that will plague us in the medium term and long term. It brings to the floor that we need to understand as a country what is the kind of development we want for Trinidad and Tobago, and therefore how does a pillar like the inter-island transport system play a critical role in that? If we cannot answer that question, then I dare say we would not even be able to solve the short-term problem, because we're just going to put a plaster on us so.
I concur with you totally.
I wanted to see there because I like the framework against which you have placed the challenge that's involved in all of this. And I want to preface what I'm about to say with the fact that we're about to return to Tobago on the 20th, on Wednesday the 20th. And we hope to share that day both with the agricultural inquiry that we commenced with this morning, as well as the Sea Bridge. So we probably divide up the day similarly. So I want to afford the organization, which has appeared before both investigations, right, and has assisted us greatly, and I want to commend you for spending the whole day here with us. And therefore, given the terms of reference that you introduced in terms of immediate, medium term, and long term, I want to afford you the opportunity to make a fresh submission with that focus in it in terms of this issue, so that when we return here on September 20th, you would be able to deliberate in that regard. And therefore, I ask you in that context to suspend your closing statements till your appearance on that occasion.
Nice one, Chairman.
Yeah.
Just do the
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we would not say our closing statement. Just before I just made just a little closing remark to thank, I listened to Senator Khan, and while we appreciate your assurances, all we want to say is that 1 passenger ferry working now, 4 generators were not working on that ferry last week, Tuesday. The boat left at 2 o'clock in the evening. A bad day for Tobagonians, wasn't able to do. It's working on 3 engines, and therefore I don't think we can wait for a replacement 6 months. It doesn't seem as though it can last. And by saying that, we wish to thank the Joint Select Committee on this particular, on the ferry service, for allowing us, the Tobago Hotel and Tourism, which is the largest NGO on the island, to come and make presentation on behalf of our members during this very important inquiry. We thank you very much, and we should have said welcome to Tobago. Good evening.
I too must thank all of you, including the other groups that appeared before us during the course of the day, both before this particular inquiry and our ongoing investigation of agricultural production in Tobago. So I want to thank all the entities that appeared before us for the time and the effort and the consideration, that they put into their submissions. I would also like to thank the clerk of the Tobago House of Assembly, Mrs. Irving Camby, for the generous and gracious hospitality which has been afforded to us today. So a special thanks goes out to the staff of the THA generally for the accommodations, because all of this is courtesy the Tobago House of Assembly. And finally, I would like to remind our viewers and our listeners and the audience present that we will be back in Tobago on the 20th, Wednesday the 20th of September, for the entire day. And with regard to the ferry service inquiry in particular, we will be meeting on Monday the 18th in Trinidad to continue our deliberations on the Trinidad leg of the inquiry. This meeting now stands adjourned.